Story 1. My ex-husband might be the most entitled man I know. Leaving him was probably one of the best decisions I have ever made, and I thought I could live in peace for the rest of my life, but here he is again. Let me provide some context. 8 years ago, I was happily married to my husband, Nathan. Our relationship was rock solid, or so I thought. We had a good relationship. We dated for 2 years, were engaged for almost a year while we planned our wedding, and then got married. At that point, I would probably defend it and fight for our marriage with my life. I thought we were soulmates, but I guess that was just me. A couple of months after our wedding, my husband lost his job. It was a difficult time for both of us, obviously, but I was confident that we could work through this, and he would find another opportunity. We had some savings in the bank, and I was working full-time. Things were a bit difficult for a few months, but he was trying his best to get a job and finally got accepted after what seemed like a million interviews. I still remember how happy we were the day he received that email. I went out and took him out to dinner to celebrate. Little did I know that this job would end up destroying my marriage. He comes back from his first day of work, and instead of looking happy, he looks awful. I could see something was wrong the moment I saw him. A very difficult conversation followed. In an almost comically bad turn of events, my husband's ex-girlfriend, Jessica, works at the same place where he has just joined. I knew about Jessica. Nathan and her dated for 3 years, and he proposed to her, but she said no and dumped him. This was a few years before the two of us met and started dating. Obviously, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about our past lovers, but I knew that it was extremely rough on him, and he never mentioned her after that one conversation with me. When I heard that it was Jessica of all people, my stomach dropped. Of all people, it was her. I didn't know what to do. I mean, sure, it had been years, and he didn't have feelings for her anymore, but the idea of them working together was not exactly pleasant to me. He seemed genuinely upset, too, and we spent a lot of time talking about what we could do. He offered to quit the job, but at that point our savings were running out, and I didn't know how long I could go on paying all our bills without making solid lifestyle changes that neither of us would be comfortable making. Also, I told myself that we were all adults here, and quitting a job over an ex was childish. We stayed up almost all night talking about what to do, and by the end of our conversation, I felt much better about the whole thing. It felt silly to think that some ex from years ago could affect our relationship in any way. My husband was extremely loving and kind and put all my doubts at ease. The next day, he went to work, and when he came back, he said that she was in a completely different department and he hardly even saw her once during the day. He told me that he never intended to speak to her unless it was for some unlikely work reason, and that he would tell me immediately if that happened. That put my mind at ease, and as more days passed, I stopped thinking about her completely. My husband was as loving as ever, and I was proud of the two of us for overcoming something that could have caused serious trouble if not handled well. Looking back, I laugh at how naive I was. I was so blinded by love and trust in my husband that I didn't once think that something fishy was going on. A couple of months into his new job, he went on a business trip. He told me that if it goes well, he may get a promotion, so I was very excited for him. I asked him if I could tag along with him and make it a mini getaway for the two of us, but he said that he would be working the whole time, so there wasn't a point. He also said that the team going for the meeting was all men and none of them were bringing their wives or girlfriends, so I wouldn't be very comfortable. I was a little upset but didn't think anything much of it. What he said did make sense. When he came back, I asked him about his meetings and if he thought he would get the promotion, but he might have to go on a few more meetings with this particular contractor before the promotion could be possible. Over the next 3 months, he went on trips at least once a month, but there was no news of a promotion. Instead of getting suspicious, I was naive enough to actually be concerned about his company making him work so hard without increasing his pay. I also want to make it clear that after the initial discussion, neither of us had spoken about Jessica even once. She didn't cross my mind for the most part, and even if she did, I chose not to mention it. When I told my friends about this during the divorce, they all said that it was incredibly naive of me to blindly trust my husband so much. I agree with them now, but back then, I would have trusted that man with my life. 5 months into his new job, I realized that I had missed my period. Not thinking much of it, I decided to take a pregnancy test anyway, just to put my mind at ease. To my surprise, it was a positive test. I was taken aback. It was definitely not a planned pregnancy, but with Nathan's new job and both of us being in a good place financially, I thought that it could be a good thing. I was nervous to tell him but also very excited. Nathan was on another business trip when I took the test, but he was coming back the same day, so I decided to wait till he got back. I still remember how nervous I was and how I started daydreaming about our new life. It was pretty late by the time he got home, and I remember staying up to have dinner together. He came in looking upset, so I asked him what happened, and he told me it was just work stuff and that he didn't want to talk about it. I said that I might have something that could cheer him up and asked him to wait while I got the test kit. I told him to close his eyes, held it up, and asked him to open his eyes. He just stared at me for a few seconds and asked me if that was what he thought it was. I thought he was just in shock and said, "Yes, and we're about to be parents." Excitedly, I waited for him to snap out of it and be happy, but after a few moments of anticipation, he still had that look on his face. I got uncomfortable and asked him if he was okay and wasn't he happy about this. His whole expression changed, and he said that he was just taken aback by the surprise. I told him that I was surprised too, but this could be a very good thing for us and we can deal with it together. He still looked uncomfortable and said that he just needed some time to think. I was extremely upset at this reaction. I expected him to be happy or at least supportive. I told him that I was disappointed in him, and he basically brushed me off, saying that I couldn't expect him to be overjoyed at such a monumental change in his life happening without his decision. I told him that he signed up for this by getting married to me, and if he couldn't be a good husband about it, maybe we needed to rethink our relationship. He said that maybe we do and left the room without another word. I said that in a moment of anger and hurt. I did not really mean it at the time, but his reaction broke my heart. I cried by myself in the living room and slept on the couch because I didn't want to see him in our bedroom. He didn't come once to check up on me or ask me to come back. Even at that point, I had faith that we would get through this and somehow recover, but that was just the beginning of my troubles. I woke up to him already dressed for work and making breakfast. I didn't speak to him and went into our bedroom again. He didn't try to stop me or even say a single word to me. I didn't know what to do. I waited for him to come in after me, but after some time, I heard the front door close and knew that he had left. I spent most of that day crying to my friends and my mom. I called in sick from work. I literally remember it like it was yesterday. By the time it was time for him to come back from work, I had a whole speech ready about how he broke my heart and needed to be a better husband to me. Little did I know he also had a speech ready, and it was nothing I could have imagined. The first thing he said after coming home was, "We need to talk." That worked for me. I needed to talk as well. I thought I needed to talk way more than he did, really. Turns out he had the surprise of a lifetime for me. We sat down across from each other, and with no warning, he asked me, "Whose baby is it?" I was so confused. I genuinely didn't understand what he meant, so I asked him, and he asked me the same thing again. "Whose baby is it?" I will never forget. I asked him what he meant and said that obviously it was our baby. What else could even be possible? He told me that he was past that point and I should just admit the truth and get it done with. I was starting to get scared at that point, started to feel less like a joke. I told him again that it was obviously his baby and I didn't understand why he was even asking me such questions because I had never been anything but loyal to him, and he had never acted this way before. He refused to make eye contact with me and said that was when I still cared about our relationship. I'm pretty sure I was already crying by then. I kept telling him that I love him and there was nothing more important to me than our marriage, but he just kept repeating the question. He must have asked me a dozen times, and each time I was as clueless as the first time. He told me that if I couldn't be honest with him, there was very little left to do because he was not raising another man's child and living with a lie. I was sobbing and kept telling him I had never even thought of another man since I met him and didn't understand what I did to deserve such allegations. He said that with the way I couldn't wait for him to leave the house and go on business trips, it told him everything he could want to know about my loyalty. I was too confused to even speak. Every single time he left for work, I got sad and told myself to be an adult and support him in his career because I remember how hard it was for both of us when he lost his job. Every single time I stopped asking to go along with him after the first few times because he always said that he was busy constantly and didn't get a minute to himself till late at night. I stopped calling him more than once a day when he was away because he wouldn't pick up and texted me he was with clients. All I did was put him first, only to hear him say that I wanted him away to spend time with another man. Felt like a slap on my face. I felt sick to my stomach, almost thought I was in a bad dream of some sort. I told him all of this, and he said that I shouldn't waste time making him look like the villain because he was tired of feeling unwanted and wouldn't let me make a fool of him. He said that ever since he started working and traveling, I had been distant and didn't make him feel wanted. He said he hated coming home because I didn't even look happy to see him, and he felt like I was happier when he was not around. I kept telling him he was wrong and this was just a huge misunderstanding, and I was just trying to be a supportive wife. He kept saying that I was hiding someone and preferred to spend time with him instead of being in our marriage. I asked him if he had any proof of these things he was saying, and he said that he didn't need proof to see what was obvious to anyone with half a brain cell. I didn't even know what to say to that. I kept saying I have not been with anyone, and I have spent most days he wasn't here either at home or maybe once or twice went out with my friends, and he could check my phone if he wanted to. His response to that was that he didn't need my phone with deleted evidence. I was truly defeated by that. I mean, what more could I even say? I asked him what he wanted me to do to prove my loyalty. I offered a paternity test after the baby was born, even though it killed my self-respect to say such a demeaning thing. Never in a million years could I have imagined voluntarily offering a paternity test. I have always been proud of my morals and ethics. Anyone who knows me would have backed me up in this. Anyone except my own husband, of course. That's what hurt the most. He said that he couldn't wait 9 months for a betrayal and there was no way he would help me grow and raise a child that wasn't his. I screamed at him, saying it was his baby and called him a delusional freak for not believing me. He said that he didn't care what I thought he was, but if I wanted this marriage to work, I needed to get an abortion. I was horrified he even said that. I asked him to think about what he was saying for a second and how crazy he sounded. He wouldn't budge, so I asked him what he would do if I didn't get an abortion because there was no way I would get one. He told me that if I wanted this marriage, then I had to get an abortion or else it was divorce. Divorce? I couldn't believe that he actually said the word. I asked him if he was serious and he said he was. I had enough at that point. It was like all the sadness disappeared at hearing those words. I told him he was free to do whatever he wanted, but I was keeping and raising my baby with or without him. He told me that he hoped I didn't sleep with a deadbeat and walked out of the house. That was the last time we were in that house together. I received a text from him later saying he would be back to get his stuff, and I told him a time I would be out and asked him to go away before I was back. The next day, I met my lawyer to discuss the divorce. We had bought the house together, our first house. I wanted everything to be quick and drama-free, and so did Nathan. We decided to sell the house and split the money equally. The other things, we just took whatever we wanted. I moved in with my sister while I figured things out, and he went wherever, I guess. We did not remain in touch at all. No one in our circles or our family saw it coming. The amount of times I must have burst into tears trying to explain to someone what happened must be ridiculous. Throughout everything, his attitude remained the same. He refused to hear me or anyone else out and insisted that I hadn't been faithful. I was friends with some of his coworkers' wives, and they told me that he had been going on about how I couldn't care less about being with him and never put any effort into the relationship. The whole divorce felt like something that was happening to someone else, or like a movie or something that I was watching instead of something I was actually living through. At certain points, I almost started believing that I must have done something wrong to make him feel the way he said I was feeling. More than anything, I wanted to talk it out, but he completely shut me out. When my son was born, I texted him to let him know. He didn't say anything back. Months later, one of the wives reached out to me and asked me if I had heard about him. I told her that we hadn't been in contact. She said she was sorry too, but wanted me to hear from a friend. I asked her what happened, and she said that Nathan had gotten back with Jessica. Apparently, they were the hot topic in the office and were all over each other all the time. I broke down crying. Over the next few weeks, I found out everything. They had been seeing each other for months. All those business trips that he went on were nothing but excuses to spend time with Jessica at her place. Jessica was the one who brainwashed him into thinking I must be seeing other men behind his back because, according to her, if she had a man, She would never let him stay away from her so often, and a load of other garbage. I found out about all this because my friends pretended to befriend her to know what happened between Nathan and me. She was extremely smug about it and didn't seem to regret it at all. I felt like the stupidest person in the world, honestly. I saw all the signs and red flags that I had missed. In hindsight, it feels so incredibly obvious. I spent months in a slump. I was extremely depressed, and it was undoubtedly the hardest period of my life. I had to quit my job and had to rely on my family to get me by. Being a single mother and dealing with my depression and the guilt of being a burden on my family was excruciatingly rough, to say the least. I'm glad my sister was there for me. I don't know how I would have managed without her, honestly. Took some time, but I recovered. I stopped obsessing about Nathan and Jessica, focused on my son, found another job, and got a place of my own. I thought I was done with my ex-husband forever. And 2 years ago, I got married to an amazing man who treats me like a queen. He is the best thing that has possibly ever happened to me. And I am so glad my son and I get to have him in our lives. Now that I've gotten all that out of the way, let me tell you why I'm actually writing this post. A few days/weeks ago, I was on Facebook scrolling randomly when I got a text from Nathan. We have had absolutely no contact over the last few years, so seeing his name pop up on the screen was a feeling I cannot exactly describe. I wondered if I should even open his text, but curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the chat. He said that he had been trying to contact me, but my number had changed, and he didn't know where I live now. He wrote a very long text about how he had broken up with Jessica because she was cheating on him with multiple men and that he never should have let her come into our relationship. He said that he had thought of me and our son all the time over the past 8 years but was too ashamed to reach out to me. He also said that he knew I would never forgive him, but he wanted to be in his son's life and would do anything for a chance to prove himself worthy of being a dad. The text had a lot of other things, but mostly just him groveling about how he wants to see his son. I couldn't believe my eyes, really. The poetic justice of Jessica cheating on him after he accused me of doing that isn't lost on me. It also felt really good to see him grovel and beg about being a part of my son's life because I know that no matter what he says, it isn't happening. I thought a lot about what I could do. I thought of ignoring him or lashing out on him or simply blocking him, but then the revengeful side of my brain took over. So, my son didn't have a father on his birth certificate. I chose not to include Nathan's name, and it's not like Nathan cared at the moment. Legally, he has no right over him. I dated my husband for 2 years before getting married to him. He has known and loved my son ever since. He is the only father figure in his life. A year ago, on our wedding anniversary, he officially adopted my baby boy. We are a family in every sense of the word. So, I let the evil thoughts win a little and texted my ex-husband back saying I didn't know what he was talking about. My son was never his to begin with, and my lovely husband has adopted him. I told him that whatever Jessica made him believe all those years ago was right and that he was the type of person to be cheated on, and I'm glad he is all alone now because he deserved that. I sent a picture of me, my husband, and our boy to him as the cherry on top. I told him to never contact me again and blocked him. Now, of course, what I said about my son not being Nathan's biological child isn't true, but that doesn't give him any right over my son. He lost that chance before my boy was even born, and I just couldn't let go of the chance to make him feel even just a tiny portion of the suffering he caused me. I told my husband about what I did, and he just laughed and said I didn't have to be so petty. Last night, I reached out to Laura. Her husband works with Nathan and asked her if she had heard anything about Nathan. She said that she was actually going to reach out to me about the same thing. Apparently, Nathan hasn't been doing so well. He had shown up to work drunk multiple times and almost got fired. Laura obviously doesn't know what I told Nathan, so she thought it was because he was finally processing the separation from Jessica. They broke up months ago. I just listened to everything and pretended to be shocked at what she said. I thanked her for being a good friend. I haven't told my husband about this yet, and I can't tell any of my friends before I tell him. I've been feeling kind of guilty. Maybe I took things too far. Update 1. Hey everyone. I just wanted to say a huge thank you for all your supportive comments and advice. It's been really helpful to read through your experiences and perspectives. It feels good to know that there are people who support my pettiness and think that Nathan got exactly what he deserved. I do have a bit of an update on the whole Nathan situation. Laura reached out to me again and said that apparently he had a full-blown fight with Jessica in the office one night when they were both working late. He had apparently created a big scene, and multiple people saw them pushing each other around and being extremely problematic. Both Jessica and Nathan got fired very quickly after that, and no one had heard from either of them ever since. All I feel about the situation is that I'm glad he redirected his anger toward Jessica and isn't trying to drag me into the situation in any way. I don't want to deal with him ever again in any capacity. I decided to tell Laura about what I told Nathan, and she seemed a bit concerned. I mean, we both hate Nathan for what he did to my son and me, but she thinks that I might have taken things too far, and there is no point in letting things from the past affect him or anyone so much. She is actually telling me to reach out to Nathan again and tell him the truth. She has promised not to tell a word about this to anyone but thinks that I should get the truth out in the open. I don't agree with this for a number of reasons. Mostly because I don't care enough about Nathan to put him out of his misery, but also because I don't want him to get angry and try to find some way of getting access to my son. It is unlikely, but you never know. I refuse to take any chances when it comes to my son. He is simply too important to me, and I don't trust Nathan enough to just let something like this go. What I did may have been when we were married, so I don't see why this is apparently such a big blow to him now. Update 2. Since my last update, I've been doing a lot of reflecting. I decided to have an honest conversation with my husband about everything that happened and what Laura told me. He was incredibly understanding and supportive, which made me feel a lot better. We sat down together, and I explained the entire situation in detail, including the message Nathan sent and my response to him. My husband listened patiently, holding my hand the whole time. When I finished, he told me that while he understood why I did what I did, he also agreed that it might have been a bit harsh. We talked about the importance of moving forward and not letting the past affect our present happiness. This conversation really helped me put things into perspective. I realized that while I might have been a bit harsh, I don't regret standing up for myself and my son. Nathan made his choices, and now he has to live with the consequences. I might have to work on this resentment that I feel towards him, though, because my husband says that it is not healthy. I kind of agree with him, but that's my business and so is my family, and I don't see why Nathan has to be a part of it. Update 3. Hi again. I wanted to share a quick update about my situation. After talking with my husband, I decided to reach out to a therapist to help me work through some lingering feelings about Nathan and the whole ordeal. It's been really helpful to get a professional perspective and to start letting go of the past. I'm doing this for my own marriage and not because I care about Nathan or anything. I feel that to be a better wife and a better mom to my kid, I need to let go of the past completely. Some of you had also suggested if I had been to therapy in the past, and I got to admit you guys were right. As far as Nathan is concerned, I haven't heard from Laura anymore after the last time, and I am not interested enough to ask about him again. I don't care how he is. He is a grown adult and should take care of his own issues. Personally, I am doing great, and that's all that matters to me. I'm glad he reached out to me and got what he deserved. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My parents promised to pay for my college but gave it to my golden child brother instead, so I told my grandparents. Now they've lost their inheritance, and my brother's getting paid from that money. I 18F started college a couple of months ago, and my parents had always promised me that I would not have to worry about paying my way through college or getting a job or any of that because they had a college fund set aside for me, and that's where the money would be coming from. They had done the same thing for my brother earlier, so it was only fair that I get the same kind of treatment. I have an older brother, Tyler, 21M, and I don't want to sound like I'm jealous, but he has always had it better than me, and I can't help but resent him a little bit for it, because it's not like he's an easy person to live with either. I have never been able to figure out why, but my parents have always gone easier on him than they have been on me. Everything he does, he just gets away with it and never has any consequences for whatever stupid things he tries to do. He used to constantly get into trouble at school for the most ridiculous reasons. One time, he got in trouble for bringing a can of beer to school and popping one in class. He said that he did it on a dare, but I think he was just trying to push everybody's buttons and see how much he could get away with. He was a good student. He did not get into much trouble at school given what he had done, and he was just suspended for a couple of days. But this is just a little example of the kind of things that he gets away with. At home, he did not get into any trouble, and for those days he did not go to school, he was just chilling and playing video games. He was not grounded. He did not even get reprimanded for what he did, and in fact, my parents actually laughed it off. Meanwhile, I know for a fact that if I had tried to do something similar, I would have been grounded for weeks, and there would have been really bad consequences for it. So I would say that my parents have always been a lot harder on me when it comes to discipline than they have been on him. I've tried to make it known to them that I think they have been treating me unfairly, but every time I try to bring it up, they start acting like I'm just jealous of my brother. And that's even worse than just being scolded and having consequences for little things. So for the past couple of years, I've been trying not to let it get to me. I know that my parents are not going to change and they are constantly going to favor my brother over me, no matter what kind of stupid things he does, and I'm just done trying to make them see how unfair it is to me. But then what happened a couple of days ago that was just unacceptable, and I absolutely had to do something about it. A couple of months ago, Tyler graduated from college, and he bought a luxury sports car just a few weeks before he graduated. Since he was turning 21, he had no job, no money, and hadn't even graduated when he bought that car. He used the credit card that my dad had given to him for his personal use and had a certain amount of money in that account. He had been authorized as a user for a really long time, so my dad did not have to be present for the purchase, and he took it on a loan so he would be able to pay the entire price in installments in the future. I was in college around that time, and one day he just video called the entire family and showed us a car that he had bought for himself. I expected my parents to be mad about it because, like I said, he had no money and no idea how he was going to pay back the amount in the future. He hadn't even graduated yet, and there were still a couple of weeks for that. Instead, they were quite happy about it and seemed to be supportive of what he had done, which was crazy because it was completely impractical, and I personally felt that he should cancel the purchase and get back his money. But anyway, it was my dad's card technically, so I could not comment on it, and I just congratulated him and let it slide. After that, he graduated and got a job working for my uncle as an assistant, and for 2 months he was able to pay the installments, but this month he defaulted on the very third payment itself. I don't want to be the person who says, "I told you so," but I did know that this was going to happen, and exactly what I had predicted is what happened. My parents called me up in the middle of the night a couple of days ago to tell me what happened, and I tried to tell them that the only thing that he could do was surrender the car and hope for the best. But my parents said that this was his first car and it shouldn't have to end this way. Honestly, I don't even know why they were calling me because it did not seem like they were asking me for advice, and even if they did need advice, I don't think an 18-year-old college student was the person to go to in a situation like this. I thought they were just going to whine about what had happened and complain for a bit since my brother was pretty depressed about this whole situation, and I so badly wanted to drop their face in it, but I refrained from doing that because I wanted to find out what exactly it was that they were calling me to talk to me about. And in a couple of minutes, I found out exactly why they were calling me in the middle of the night. After beating about the bush for a couple of minutes, my parents finally told me that since my brother had been unable to clear the payment, they had decided to pay off the amount for that month from their own pockets. I thought that it was fairly normal for parents to do that, and I did not understand why they were calling to tell me that, but then they told me that by their own pockets, they meant my college fund that they had set aside specifically for my use. And they told me that after giving it a bit of thought, they had decided that it would be best if they decided to pay off the rest of the installments as well, since they did not think that my brother would be able to do it and they did not want to ruin the credit score that my father had. So they had decided that they were going to use my college fund to pay off the rest of the installments for the car, and I would probably have to get a job. They were hoping that it would not come to that, but just in case, they were warning me beforehand. I obviously lost my temper at that point because this is not something that had been part of the plan. I don't mean to sound entitled, but they had promised me something, and I expected them to be able to live up to their promise, especially because this was not my fault that I was going to have to suffer the consequences of it. It was my brother's fault, my brother's problem, and I expected him to deal with it, not me. I made it much clearer than that. This bright idea that had come to them, it was absolutely not fair to me, and I was not going to be fine with it, so they had to look for alternatives. My parents only had one thing to say, and it was that this was their own money, and my college fund was just something that they had believed was going to support me. But now, since there was an emergency, they believed it would be better for them to use that to pay off the installments instead, and I just had to understand where it was coming from. I kept trying to tell them that they could just surrender the car instead of jeopardizing my future, but they told me that it was my brother's first car and for sentimental reasons, they could not. It was crazy to me that they had sentimental reasons not to give up, but it was quite easy for them to give up on my education and my future. If they had told me right from the beginning that I would have to work my way through college and pay for the college tuition myself, I would not have had a problem with this, but what they were doing is absolutely unacceptable. After arguing with them for a bit, I realized that there was no point in talking to them since they had already very obviously made up their mind, and so I decided to hang up and do what I had planned on doing if a situation like this ever arose. I called my grandparents up and told them everything. My grandparents on my mother's side of the family, they have always been very supportive of me, and they understand how my parents have been treating me. I had half a mind to start living with them at some point, but then decided not to do that because they were already pretty aged and I did not want to be a burden on them. I know they would never say it themselves, but I'm just not the kind of person who would want to do that just for my own convenience. In probability, if I had ever told them that I wanted to live with them, they would have definitely been to me with open arms, but I don't know, I just had my own apprehension about it regardless of how kindly they treated me. I love them and I know that they love me, but I had my reasons. They were already doing enough for me. I did not want to add on as an extra. When my parents would deny me something, I would always go to my grandparents, and they would do it for me. It was mostly just silly, but this was a big deal since college tuition was not a laughing matter and it was actually quite a lot of money. Asking them for that sort of money would be kind of complicated for me, and that's why I've been really grateful to my parents when they had told me that they had a college fund set aside for me right from the beginning. But now that the situation had changed, I absolutely had to go to my grandparents because there was no way that I was going to suffer the consequences of something that was not even my fault. I was really distressed and upset when I called them up, so they told me that I could come back home for the weekend and talk to them in person because clearly this was not something that could be discussed over the phone in just a couple of minutes, and luckily it was Friday that day, so I went home the very next day. I did not visit my parents, and I did not entertain any phone calls and messages from them. I went straight to my grandparents' place and there I spilled everything. I ended up crying because I was so distraught, and I told them that I really did not want to be a burden on them financially or otherwise, but I just needed them to help me out here because I wanted to finish my education, but my parents were putting me in a really difficult spot. My grandfather was really pissed off by whatever I had told him, and he told me instantly that I did not have to worry about any of this and I could go back to college and be completely stress-free because they were going to be there for me no matter what. That made me feel a little relieved, and he told me that they would handle the college tuition if my parents found themselves unable to do so. Once they had given me the reassurance, I calmed down, and I blocked my parents and my brother because I did not want anything to do with them after that. They had put me in a really difficult position, and I was never going to forgive them for that. I spent last Saturday with my grandparents, and on Sunday evening, I was about to leave and go back to college. My college campus is an hour away from where my grandparents and parents live, so it was quite easy for me to travel back and forth in case anybody had any questions about that. But when I came back to college, I started receiving several calls and messages from my uncle. I did not know what that was about because my uncle and I don't really keep in touch, and even though we have a normal relationship, I did not expect him to be calling me frequently. At first, I was ignoring him thinking this would have something to do with my parents, but after a while I got really curious, so I ended up answering one of his phone calls, and then he told me to unblock my parents immediately because they were really pissed and they wanted to talk to me. He told me that he was kind of annoyed with them because they kept bothering him trying to convince him to talk to me to get me to talk to them, and it was getting on, so he told me to get back in touch with them, and so I did just to know what they wanted to talk to me about. When I called my parents up, they put me on blast immediately and started yelling at me about how I had ruined their lives and turned my grandparents against them, which is just so wrong on so many levels. They accused me of trying to get revenge on them for trying to do something good for my brother, and that I was jealous of him and that my jealousy had gotten as ugly as possible. I had no idea what they were talking about since my grandparents had just promised me that they would cover my college tuition, and they definitely could not have a problem with that because I don't think it was going to affect them, but I was wrong since it did affect them. Apparently, my grandparents had called them after I had left and told them that they were going to get the money that was going to come out of their inheritance. And even in the future, if I needed anything, that was also going to come out of the inheritance. So they had just screwed up, and now they were going to have to face the consequences for it. I thought that it was completely fair since essentially my grandparents were just doing with them what they had done to me. I did not see anything wrong with it, but they were very upset. They think that I did all of this on purpose to get back at them, and even though that was not my intention, I don't mind the consequences of what is happening. My parents were practically fuming on the phone call and kept accusing me of everything that occurred to them without even thinking for a second that this might have been their own fault. So I decided to tell them that they deserved all of this, and then I hung up and blocked them again. Now I have nothing left to say to them. After that, they did not get in touch with me again because they could not, since they had no more access as I had blocked them, but they did put up a post on social media and tried to put all the blame for this on me. I got to know about it from a couple of my family members who are still on my side. To my surprise, some people are actually saying that I should be more understanding. People are even calling me entitled now, which I don't understand. The fact of the matter is that my parents had promised me and told me for years that they would take care of my college expenses. When I started, I expected them to be able to live up to that promise, and I don't think there is anything wrong with that. Had they never promised me anything of the sort, I would have been perfectly fine with paying my way through college and working. I don't think it's entitled of me to demand what I had been promised. And coming to my brother in a situation, I don't understand why people are being so compassionate towards him and not me. He was the one who made a terrible decision by purchasing a car that he did not have any idea how he was going to pay for. I don't think he deserves anybody's sympathy right now, and on the other hand, I'm just trying to make my way through college so I can get a good job in the future and maybe buy a car like that when I actually might be able to pay for it with my own money. If anything, people should be sympathizing with me instead of him, and I just can't wrap my head around what's going on right now. I'm just so confused by the reaction of my family members to the post that my parents had put up, and I don't know what to say anymore. My grandparents keep trying to reassure me that it's going to be fine and people just don't know my side of the story, which is why they are calling me entitled and all that other ridiculous stuff, but I'm just not sure anymore. I feel upset and I want to know if I actually am entitled or not. So, am I the a-hole because I asked my grandparents for help when my parents told me that they would not be able to pay for my college tuition like they had promised? Date 1. Hi. So I have given it some thought and now I don't really feel bad about what happened anymore. I did the right thing. My grandparents did the right thing, and if there is anybody who is in the wrong in the situation, it's got to be my parents. I don't even blame my brother. He's just stupid, but his stupidity has always been encouraged by my parents, and they have never done anything to put an end to it. They have never said anything to him that might make him think twice before doing whatever he wants. They have always encouraged him to do anything that he wishes to without thinking of the consequences of it, and they have always been ready to pay the price for it. Well, they can do that on their own dime, but they also have to realize that there are consequences of what they do, and this is just part of it. I have decided to block out all the negative comments from my head that I read earlier. These relatives don't even know me, and they don't even know what I have been through. Most importantly, they only know one side of the story, which is my parents' side, and from that, they have made so many judgments about me. They have no idea about the fact that my parents were the ones who promised me that they were going to take care of my expenses when I was in college, and they were the ones who failed to live up to that promise and screwed up on purpose. So now I think what my grandparents are doing to them is completely fair. I have had a discussion with my grandparents about this, and they told me that they were going to try and get that post taken down, so I'm going to leave it up to them, but I'm not going to meddle in the situation anymore. I'm just sick and tired of dealing with my parents. They are just not cut out to be my parents. Maybe they're perfect for Tyler, but as my parents, they are failures at that. I feel a lot more relieved now after reading the comments on my original post. Most of you were on my side, and I really appreciate that. Some of you still had the audacity to call me entitled even after I told everybody repeatedly that it was my parents who made the promise to me, and that's the only reason why I had expected them to handle my college tuition. There is nothing entitled about that, and if people still want to call me that, they can go ahead. I don't care. I know who I am and I know what I stand for, so it really doesn't matter to me if people want to misconstrue my words on purpose and make me seem like the bad guy. Be it my relatives or people on Reddit, it does not matter to me anymore because I know I'm being true to myself and that's all that matters. Update 2. So it has been a week since my parents put up that post, and today I got to know from a couple of my relatives that they have taken it down. These are not the same relatives calling me entitled on the post. These are different people. These people are actually on my side. They had reached out to me earlier when my parents originally made their post and told me about it. One of them is a cousin on my father's side of the family. Another person on my side here is my aunt and her family, my mom's first cousin. These people, along with my grandparents, have been extremely supportive of me and have checked up on me for the last couple of days to make sure that I'm doing all right. They have also been trying to talk to my parents and get them to take down their post, as it was really affecting me negatively. I know that I said I would not let the comments get to me, but I had made a fake account to stalk their profile and read the comments even though I knew that it was not good for me. I just had to know what people were saying about me, and it was really getting to me. Before anybody says it, I know that it was an incredibly stupid decision on my part, but curiosity just got the better of me and I don't know what I was thinking. I've been very upset about it because these were people who had known me my entire life, and even then they were siding with my parents. I couldn't believe that people actually thought that I was jealous of Tyler. It was all incredibly hurtful, but thankfully my family managed to get that post taken down. Somehow, my grandparents told me that they had managed to do it by telling my parents that the longer the post stayed up, the more they would lose out on their inheritance, and that's what finally got them to take it down. I can't believe that people can be so greedy for money that they can prioritize that over their own children, or maybe they don't even consider their daughter anymore, considering the fact that they have not even bothered to get in touch with me once after that phone call, even though I unblocked all of them because I wanted them to be able to have access to me in case they wanted to apologize. But they did not bother to do that, probably because they don't even think that they are wrong here. They know that this is their fault and I'm not in the wrong, or else they never would have made the post excluding my side of the story. But still, they want to make me feel like the bad guy and constantly villainize me for wanting what's best for myself. Not even my brother seems to care, which is just ridiculous given the fact that even though he had never exactly been my friend, we had at least had some sort of relationship. I'm just really disappointed in my family. I don't even know why I decided to unblock them and give them a chance to apologize to me. I should have known that they were never going to acknowledge the fact that they messed up and try to reach out to me. They don't care about me. They have made that very clear right from the beginning. I was just holding out hope that maybe at some point they would change their mind and come around. I have always tried to be a good daughter and a good sister and whatnot to all of them, hoping that they would realize at some point that I'm also a part of their family and they need to value me. But I'm afraid that that's never going to happen. Now, a lot of people might call me stupid and stuff for hoping that they might love me, but I can't help it. These people are my family, and the way they have been emotionally neglecting me for so many years, it really hurts. I don't know why I'm talking about this right now, but I just feel like I want to let it out of my system and for all so I can regain some sense of normalcy. I feel bad about it, of course, but I'm just glad that the post has been taken down now, and I know that they don't care about me. They never had, and they never will. And that's just the harsh reality that I'm going to have to accept. I think I might have to block them again because it's for my own peace of mind. Giving them access to me just makes sure that in the future they can say whatever they want of me, and I'll just have to deal with it, so it's better for me to cut all ties with them and shut the door for good. They are not my family and never have been. The only family I have moving past this point is going to be my grandparents and the people who have actually been there for me in these tough times. So, thank you so much for going through my post and my update, sticking by for all the support that you guys have shown me, and for letting me know that I'm not alone in this situation. It means a lot to me, truly does. Update 3. Hi everyone. Almost 6 months have passed since my last update, and I'm so happy to tell you guys that I'm doing a lot better now than I was back then. I was in really bad condition mentally at that point of time, and after that, I decided to start therapy because I was still trying to cope with the fact that my parents and I would never be back on good terms again, and things would never be the same again. I did not have parents who loved me, and not even my brother seemed to care about me. So now when I go back home from college, it will always be my grandparents' place and not the place that I had called home for so many years. It was a little difficult for me to accept at first, but after I blocked my parents and my brother and started therapy, I started finding it a bit easier to deal with. Time for the Thanksgiving holidays. I had to go back to my grandparents' house since I do not have contact with my parents anymore. I was happy to learn that the people who were on my side have all cut any ties they had with my parents, and they don't seem any worse off for it either. So I don't think I'm turning anybody against them like they had tried to do to me. The family is divided into 2 sides right now. Some people are on my parents' side and some are on my side, so it's pretty much a weird situation right now, but whatever, they started it. My grandparents have cut ties with my parents, and they don't know it yet, but all the inheritance is going to come to me. It's not going to go to them. My grandparents have already changed their will, and just to avoid the drama, they have not told me anything about it to my parents yet, and it's going to stay that way because then they are not going to be able to find out until it's too late. This is just to make sure that in case there is an apology, it's going to be genuine. If my parents ever try to reestablish contact with me and try to make amends with me, it's going to be because they actually want to do so from the bottom of their hearts and not just because they want the inheritance. I think it's fair enough, and I'm actually really thankful for my grandparents for being so supportive of me and for giving me the love and affection that I never got from my parents. I may never get back to the family that I once had, but it's fine because it was not the right family for me anyway. At least now I have the family that I deserve, and I'm always going to be grateful for it. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Groom's ex crashed our wedding, so I left him at the altar. Now his parents want to buy me a house to fix his mistake, but he demands I give it to him since he's homeless. Hi, so I was supposed to get married last month, but that ended up not happening because my ex-fiancé, Scott, is an idiot. Now he's driving me crazy because his parents want to buy me a house to compensate for his idiotic behavior, and he thinks that I shouldn't accept it. I don't understand what to do now. For context, Scott and I are both 25. We met in college and have been together since graduation. He didn't ask me out before, even though we had a back-and-forth flirtation thing going on ever since we became friends in our second semester. However, after we graduated, he finally worked up the courage to ask me out, and I said yes. After dating for a couple of years, he proposed to me last year, and I said yes. He and I have had a perfect relationship, and I didn't think anything could possibly go wrong, but man, was I wrong. Before me, Scott had been with only one other woman, and that was his childhood sweetheart. Let's call her Caroline. I had never personally met her, but I had seen a couple of photos of her from his high school yearbooks. They had been voted best couple when they graduated, and it made sense because they had been together since middle school. He never spoke about her, but I did get to know from a couple of his friends that they had been inseparable while they were growing up. They had been best friends when they were in elementary school, which turned into a relationship by middle school, and by the time they were in high school, they were actually planning to get married. Unfortunately, it didn't work for them because Caroline's father wanted her to go to business school in New York, which was really far away. They tried to make things work and continue the long-distance relationship, but they couldn't, and it led to a lot of fighting, so they broke up a few months after college started. I didn't know about any of this until much later because Scott introduced me to his school friends after we had already been together for 3 months. I did find it weird that he hadn't mentioned anything about Caroline when we first started dating because it felt like a pretty significant thing to skip telling me, since they had been together for so long and even had plans to get married after college. Also, the fact that they had broken up in the first year of college, and by then Scott and I were already friends and did have a bit of a cute little flirtatious thing going on, I had no idea he was struggling with a breakup at the time. Even after we started dating, he didn't tell me anything about Caroline, and since he had deleted all photos of her from his social media, I couldn't find out about her myself either while I was stalking him before we started dating. I don't think his school friends would have mentioned Caroline either, but one of them slipped up. The day I learned about her had also been the day of our first big fight as a couple, so I remember it quite clearly. Obviously, it had been his birthday, and he had invited all his school friends over so he could introduce me to them and we could have dinner together. I had already met his family, and since we were in college together, I knew that group of friends as well. These were the only people who didn't know me, so we hosted a special dinner on the day of his birthday for them to get to know me, but it was actually I who got to know Scott better that day. While we had been talking after dinner, Scott left the room to attend a call from a relative. Since his friends were making a lot of noise to mess with him, just like guys do, once he was outside, one of his friends mentioned that he was pleased to see that he and I were so happy together because he genuinely hadn't expected Scott to ever be able to move on from Caroline. I had been caught off guard when he said that because at the time I had no idea who she was, and they realized that immediately after I made a face and asked who that was. They tried to brush it off, but the cat was already out of the bag, and I pushed them to tell me who they had been talking about, so they were forced to tell me about Caroline and her history with Scott. They probably knew that they had messed up and tried to cover it up by making it seem like no big deal, but as soon as I heard that Caroline and Scott had been together since middle school and had plans to go to college together, I knew that this was a big deal and I had to confront Scott about it. After his friends left, everyone had sobered up by the time Scott came back to the room and cleared out quickly afterward. Once everyone was gone, I decided to bring Caroline up and ask Scott why this was the first I had heard about her, because it seemed to me like he was trying to cover up a very important part of his life and hide it from me. I could tell at the time that he was very uncomfortable talking about this because he kept saying that it was no big deal and tried to downplay the significance of that relationship. He tried to convince me that Caroline had meant nothing to him and that it had just been a stupid high school relationship which he had completely moved on from. But I didn't buy it because I was hurt that he hadn't told me anything about this woman. I insisted that he tell me everything because it was important for me to know. But he didn't think that Caroline had anything to do with our relationship and refused to talk about her. When I kept pushing him, he snapped at me and told me to mind my own business. So that led to our first big fight, and I ended up spending the night at a friend's place because he had been simply horrible that day. He had told me that it wasn't his job to make me feel less insecure, especially when it came to a past relationship that he didn't even want to discuss. He completely glossed over the fact that he had kept this a secret from me for no real reason and made it all about me and my issues, saying that I was getting insecure over a past relationship from high school, and it showed that I had a lack of trust in this relationship, so it was insulting to him. He somehow convinced me that I was getting upset for no reason and that the only reason he hadn't told me about Caroline was because he knew that I would react exactly the way that I did and get upset because he had been with her for a long time, but I would refuse to believe him if he said that it didn't mean anything to him anymore and kept feeling jealous and insecure about her. He played it quite cleverly, and a few days after the fight, I started to think that I had probably made a bigger deal out of it than was necessary and blown it all out of proportion. So I apologized to him, and he forgave me as long as I promised him that I wouldn't bring Caroline up again. He told me that the reason he didn't want to talk about her was because she was really clingy and annoying, and it was embarrassing for him to talk about her because it just reminded him that he had wasted so many years of his life with her and he didn't want to waste more time talking about her when he was with me now. So I promised him that I wouldn't bring her up again, and we decided to move on from that fight. I did meet his school friends several times after that, and Caroline only ever came up once because I guess he had probably instructed them all not to talk about her around me ever again. The last time that I heard about her was just a couple of weeks after the fight, and I had run into the friend who had mentioned Caroline the first time that we met at the grocery store. He told me that Scott had told them about the fight that we had, and he felt like he needed to apologize for it because it wasn't his place to say anything about his relationships, past or present, and he felt bad for causing a fight between us. He told me that I had nothing to worry about, especially if it was about Caroline. Irrespective of the length of their relationship, he had never seen Scott as happy with her as he had been with me. He probably said it in order to do damage control, but I bought it and it made me feel really happy because this meant that whatever Scott had said about him having completely moved on from Caroline was true, and the reason he was so secretive when it came to her was actually because of what he had stated and not because he was still in love with her or whatever. And that was pretty much the last time anybody ever brought Caroline up. His family knew better than to talk about her around me, and his friends had learned their lesson, so I never heard about her again, and a few months later, I had forgotten about that episode entirely. We went on with our lives afterwards, and things were simply great between us. We did have a few ups and downs, like every other couple, but it was nothing out of the ordinary, and I didn't have any second thoughts about marrying him. But I guess I should have because our marriage ended up not taking place because of Caroline, ironically. So I guess I should have taken her more seriously instead of being overly confident in the strength of our relationship. Things had been great even up until the morning of the wedding, and Scott had been as happy as I had ever seen him. There was literally no way that I or literally anyone could have predicted what was about to happen. I had even walked down the aisle and he was about to say his vows when any bride's worst nightmare happened. Caroline came running through the entrance and demanded that we stop the ceremony and that she couldn't let this take place, especially when she knew that Scott was her soulmate. I knew what Caroline looked like. I had seen her before in the yearbook photos, and I had wished that I would never have to see her in real life because I couldn't imagine any happy circumstances that would lead to us meeting. I was in shock and I froze up there at the altar, as did Scott and everyone else who was present there. We didn't have any security measures in place because this was supposed to be a really private and intimate ceremony, and there were really not many guests who knew about this anyway. So hiring a security team didn't seem like a priority. We were also having this ceremony on Scott's uncle's property, which wasn't open to the public and most people didn't know about it. I regretted all of that later once I realized that the wedding wasn't going to happen. But while I was standing there at the altar and waiting for someone to say something, the only thing that I could think of was that Scott was obviously going to kick her out and he wouldn't entertain this because in the past he had made it very clear that he didn't like her. So you guys can probably imagine how horrified I was when instead of telling her to get out, Scott actually started talking to her about how she had managed to find us because we hadn't exactly publicized the details of our wedding. He seemed to have forgotten about the vows altogether and was just having a conversation with her while everybody looked confused. The two of them completely ignored me, and she started confessing her love to him at our wedding. She told him that she had found out about the wedding because she had still been in touch with a couple of his friends from school, and they had just casually mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. She told Scott that she had never stopped loving him, but she didn't come back all those years because their breakup had been really bitter and she had been waiting for him to come around. When she heard that he had started dating me, she thought she was going to give up on him. But after she learned that we were about to get married, she realized that she couldn't let this happen because then she would regret it for the rest of her life. The only reason she had even been late to the ceremony was because of the traffic, and she had actually intended on reaching about an hour before the ceremony was about to begin and talk to him in person. But that hadn't been possible, and so she had to interrupt the wedding after it had already started. She told him that she loved him and always had, and now it was up to him if he wanted to work things out with her. But if he was sure about me, then she would leave the ceremony and we could all pretend like this never happened. This discussion had been happening right in front of me, and strangely enough, since he was actually entertaining it, nobody knew whether to kick her out or just to let them talk. When Caroline said that she would leave if Scott was sure about me, I thought that he was finally going to tell her to go away because the opportunity to do so was right there, and I was actually willing to forgive him even up until that point. But instead of saying that he was sure of me and was going to go ahead with a wedding, he started arguing with her instead of just doing the normal thing. He told her that she had been unfair to him by attending a different college and breaking up with him because that had never been part of the plan, and now she was here confusing him just because she hadn't been able to make up her own mind. He accused her of being selfish and never thinking about his feelings, and Caroline apologized for it and tried to tell him that she would change. By then, almost 10 minutes had passed since she interrupted the ceremony, and I had come back to my senses. They were having a full-blown conversation about the past, and I realized that this was turning into all about them. I was nothing but a supporting character by that point. I felt incredibly hurt that Scott was entertaining this conversation instead of just showing her out, and all eyes were on them now. Even my parents and my bridesmaids were frozen to their spots because they didn't know what to do, and I can't even blame them for it because everything that was happening was just so strange. I couldn't take it anymore, so I decided to walk away instead because it had become increasingly clear to me that no matter what Scott said, he still did have some feelings for Caroline and had been playing me like a fool all along. Even as I started walking away from the altar, he didn't try to stop me, and only said that he would get back to me when he had dealt with the situation at hand, and that I could go wait in my hotel room until he had sorted things out here. Once I was inside my room, I completely broke down because it was insane to me that, instead of kicking her out of the venue, Scott was actually trying to talk to her and making it all worse than it already was. My wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but because of Scott and Caroline, it turned into a complete nightmare, something straight out of a badly made rom-com. And as it turns out, I was not the leading character here. I was the idiot who gets dumped on her wedding day because the guy is still in love with his ex, but I had been too blind and stupid to realize it earlier. While I was having a breakdown in my room, my parents and my bridesmaids came by a little later, maybe 15 minutes after I left, and told me that they had left the venue because Scott and Caroline were still talking and had excused themselves to have a private conversation before they returned to the ceremony. I couldn't believe it and started crying again because at that point there was just no hope, and I knew that I wasn't going to get married that day. My parents told me that they had told all the guests from our side of the family to go home and then come up to my room because they didn't think that the wedding was going to happen. They suggested that they take me home with them because this was quite insulting for everyone, and I said yes to that. So instead of waiting for Scott to be done with his conversation with Caroline and finally come to talk to me, I decided to go back home with my parents. My bridesmaids very graciously offered to take care of the situation with the guests so that I could deal with this on my own, and within an hour I had packed up my things and was heading back home with my parents. I kept crying throughout the car ride while my mother tried to comfort me, but even then, some small part of me was hoping that maybe Scott would call me and ask me to come back, or he would beg me for forgiveness and then we could still get married, because I refused to believe that this was happening to me right now. However, he didn't try to reach out to me until the evening, and that was only to explain to me that he had decided not to get married or to get back with Caroline because he felt like neither of those options were suitable for him right now, and he needed to be alone for a while so he could sort out how he felt about both of us inside his own head before he came to a conclusion. So all of that had been for nothing. Eventually, In the text, he told me that he had been talking to Caroline for a really long time and they had discussed everything that had been left unsaid during their breakup. In doing so, he realized that maybe he hadn't completely moved on from her, which is why it had been so difficult for him to talk about her. But now he couldn't run away from his feelings anymore and he didn't think that it was fair to me, so he was breaking things off with both of us until he was clear about what he felt. He mentioned that his parents were going to take care of all the expenses so I didn't have to worry about any of it, and then he said that he was terribly sorry for whatever had happened and for ruining what was supposed to be a beautiful day. He said that he hoped that I could forgive him someday, but until then he felt that we should take some time apart. When I read that text, I swear I started crying so hard that I almost threw up because I was devastated. I actually felt physically ill for the next couple of days and couldn't even go back to my house, so I had to stay with my parents while they nursed me back to health. Scott's parents handled everything and were actually pretty nice to me because they reached out to me a few days after the day of the wedding and apologized to me for what their son had done. They told me that they were really ashamed of everything that had happened and were willing to do whatever it took to make it up to me. But I couldn't ask anything of them because this wasn't their fault. They were really decent people and Scott's behavior was all about him. They had nothing to do with that. So that was it, and once the wedding vendors had been paid off, I decided to take a break and just sort of process everything that had happened because it's not every day that you spend months planning a wedding with a man that you love only to have it ruined by his ex-girlfriend. I can joke about it now because it's been almost a month and I have been talking about this in therapy and trying to work out my feelings, but it still hurts. I have no idea what Scott had been up to because I had deactivated all my socials and blocked him from everywhere after I had replied to his text and told him that I was making it easier for him to decide between me and Caroline by removing myself from the equation, and now he didn't have to choose anymore. After sending that message, I blocked him and he didn't try to reach out to me after that. However, a few weeks ago his parents paid me a visit and told me that they had come into a lot of money because his dad had just made CEO and that came with a significant pay raise, so now they wanted to buy me a place of my own, which they had been planning to do anyway. It was originally supposed to be a wedding gift for me and Scott, but now it was going to be a gift to me to make up for whatever had happened. I have been living with my parents ever since the day of the wedding because the house that I used to live in earlier was one that Scott and I had leased out together, and I was afraid that if I went back then I would run into him, and I didn't want that. My bridesmaids had been the ones to pack all my things and bring them back home for me a week after the day of the wedding, and they had told me that the house had been completely empty when they showed up there, so they knew that Scott hadn't been around and had left with his things before me. I had spoken to the landlord and he had also confirmed that Scott had backed out of the arrangement and now I was his only tenant, so I told him about whatever had happened and said that I wouldn't be coming back because it was just really difficult for me to return to our home and I couldn't move back for practical reasons as well. The rent would be too high for me to pay by myself, so right now I have nowhere else to go, and I also know that I can't live with my parents indefinitely, and if his parents were nice enough to offer, then I don't see any reason for me to reject it. But Scott found out about this somehow and has since started hounding me from different phone numbers to try and pressure me into rejecting them because he is apparently homeless now and has been living in his car for the past few weeks. He believes that he is entitled to the house and that I should tell his parents no so that they approach him instead. He hasn't explained anything to me, like how he ended up homeless and living in his car or why he isn't on speaking terms with his parents anymore, and claims that it's none of my business, but he keeps saying that I can't accept the offer because he needs a house more than me right now and it would be really selfish of me to say yes. I really want a place of my own and I don't think that there is anything wrong with me accepting his parents' offer. What if I let my ex-fiancé's parents buy me a house while he's homeless? Update 1. Okay. So I told Scott that I wasn't going to give him the benefit of the doubt unless he told me the truth about how he ended up homeless, and he finally confesses to me that after the day of the wedding he decided to resign from his job and go off for some soul searching. He didn't even wait for the 2 weeks and just took off. He ended up spending a week in the Japanese islands and blew through a lot of his money. He didn't keep in touch with anyone for that 1 week, not even his parents. He had been expecting his parents to help him out by letting him live with them when he came back, but they were obviously really angry because he had disappeared without a word and hadn't even bothered to give them an explanation. But now he expected them to help him out just because he was back. So they got into a big fight and he told them that he didn't need their help, but he soon realized that he had no place to go since he had ended his lease for our old place and he couldn't count on his parents. He could get a new apartment, but that would take some time and he didn't have a stable income right now, so he also had to look for jobs. He couldn't live with any of his friends either because he had fought with them as well after the day of the wedding for being loose-lipped around Caroline and telling her about the details of the wedding, and none of them were talking to him anymore. so he had no one at the moment. But thankfully, he heard about his parents' offer to me from his father's realtor. That guy didn't know about the wedding falling through and had contacted him to ask what kind of house he was looking for because he had assumed that when Scott's father told him to start preparing a list of potential properties, he was probably referring to the wedding gift that they had discussed earlier, and so he had reached out to Scott, which is how he found out that his father was buying a house, and he knew that it was for me because his father had told his realtor to look for places near my workplace. It was actually quite impressive because it must have taken him a lot of detective work to come to that conclusion. But now that I knew the truth and all my questions had been answered, I had no use for him anymore, so I disconnected the call once he was done talking and blocked that number as well. It was a really mean thing to do, but I don't care. What he did to me was far worse than this pettiness, so now I have a free pass for everything. Update 2. I finally reached out to Scott's parents and I told them that I was ready to accept their offer because I really felt like I deserved it. I also told them about Scott's homelessness and they told me that they were ready to help him out as soon as he came to his senses and apologized to them. But if he couldn't own up to his mistakes, then there's not much that they could do for him, and I agree with them. It's about time that he learns to clean up his own messes. He has been trying to contact me ever since I hung up on him the last time, but that door is closed now. I hope he realizes that and stops wasting his own time because it's pretty embarrassing. Update 3. Hi. It's been a couple of weeks since the last update and I have officially moved into my new house. Scott's parents and my parents were all great help, and I recently even hosted a housewarming party where everyone was invited, including my guests from the wedding, because I wanted everyone to have a nice time since they had all been really gracious and helpful in the aftermath of the wedding fiasco. Everyone congratulated me because I seem to be doing a lot better than the last time they saw me, and I really am. I feel a lot better now. As for Scott, I don't really know what he is up to. A couple of my friends told me after some online stalking that he has moved in with Caroline, or at least that's what it looks like from his social media, because he is definitely living in a woman's house, that's for sure, given the feminine decor and everything. But I don't care now. It doesn't matter to me. He can live wherever he wants to as long as it's far away from me. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I built a successful restaurant with my husband, and now my husband handed it over to his deadbeat sister. I, 50F, really need an outside view on this because I feel like I am being gaslit by my husband, Marcus, 53M, and his family. It all revolved around a restaurant that Marcus and I started together in our local town, which ended up becoming a super successful location and was even recommended in a national magazine. It was an integral part of our lives together, kind of like our own baby. Marcus and I made the perfect team. He handled the business end of things while I used my culinary expertise and friendly nature to become the face of the restaurant. There was never a lean period for our business, and we slowly began to win more and more accolades. We even did a cloud kitchen during COVID, the first of its kind in our area. It kind of became a must-visit location for travelers and a frequent haunt for locals. However, on the personal side, I had quite a few tiffs with Marcus, and they mostly related to how much of a pushover he was when it came to his family. I guess it mainly boiled down to him not being able to say no. If his parents wanted to borrow our truck, even though we needed it, Marcus would lend it. If his uncle wanted us to comp all his meals at the restaurant for months on end, Marcus wouldn't say anything. I guess I tried my best to make sure that it wasn't like we were being taken advantage of, but of course that made me the villain in his family's eyes, and they often talked about me behind my back. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate and understand the importance of sticking up for family and doing favors for our loved ones, but it was just way too excessive with Marcus' family. Try as I might, nothing worked, but my husband was still a wonderful man. I guess it wasn't the worst thing in the world that his fatal flaw was his overbearing generosity, right? It wasn't until a couple of years ago when my husband suddenly brought his sister on to work at our restaurant. My SIL, Beth, 40F, has been dealt the short end of the stick when it comes to life. She got pregnant when she was 30, and her long-term boyfriend couldn't handle the responsibility and ended up skipping town. After that, she's been invested in raising her child and was working a soul-crushing corporate job. So when our business was picking up pace, Beth expressed an interest in joining me on the restaurant manager/marketing side of things. I was immediately reluctant as my SIL had not worked in this field before and, to be honest, had never bothered building a bond with the local community as I had. I mean, I'd often invited her over for our restaurant's outings at farmers markets or stalls if she was genuinely interested in becoming a part of the business, but she always ended up flaking at the last moment. My SIL ended up quitting her job due to the lack of excitement it generated in her during the pandemic and eventually began to push Marcus more and more for a chance to work with the restaurant. I was dead set against this idea, but my husband felt that we should do it to ensure the financial safety of our niece. I do love my SIL's kid, but I don't think there was any chance of ruination if her mom was out of work for a year or so. There were savings, and I wouldn't even mind chipping in to help her out. My main issue with bringing her to work at the restaurant was her complete lack of passion for the food, the people, and everything that made it tick. In fact, after a point, I even relented and asked if Marcus would be okay taking his sister on in a more clerical or business-oriented role. But he said, no, she doesn't want to get back into the same boring work that she was doing. After that, he ended up going over my head and appointed Beth as basically an equal partner in the business. I was annoyed, but since we had started everything so informally, I couldn't do anything legally. To be honest, that's not what I wanted to do anyways. It wasn't like me to bicker in court with my husband, and I just voiced my frustration at not being treated like an equal partner. The 2 years when Beth was on board with me were mind-bogglingly frustrating. She never considered the tastes of local people and tried to get rid of staples on the menu based on whatever fusion dish seemed trendy, and people were put off by it until I tweaked the recipe and put out the fire she had caused. It was getting a little too much for me, and I told Marcus that I would be retiring from the restaurant. We had more than enough money to do so even well before bringing Beth to work at the restaurant, but I kept going because of how much the business meant to me. However, with my SIL there, the fun was sucked out of everything, and I just couldn't find it in myself to go on. Marcus said that he understood my perspective and was okay with that, and he too would retire with me. Obviously, this raised alarm bells in my mind about who would take over our business, and I asked, so, will we sell it off to an investor? Shut it down? What'll happen with our restaurant, Marcus? And he nonchalantly replied, oh, I was thinking we could make Beth the owner. Keep it in the family, you know? Hell no. This was the worst idea ever. I wasn't shy about voicing how inept Beth had been during her time at the restaurant and how that was directly contributing to my decision to retire, but my husband just waved it off. I was furious but also too tired to keep fighting him on this, so I eventually just rolled over. As much as it hurts, I am enjoying my retirement right now, and things are going really well in my personal life. Marcus has also been a great husband without the business in the way, but every time I pass by the restaurant, I see how badly it's doing, and some evil part of me ends up gloating at that. One night, Marcus sheepishly brought up the same issue and asked me if I would be open to working again to show Beth the ropes. I told him that I'm more than happy where I am, and he didn't push me on it any further. However, the very next day, Beth called me and basically ended up groveling and ranting about how much money it costs to run the business. She basically said that she'd be forced to sell unless I could come in and bring the restaurant back to its old self. Part of me was swayed by her call, but I don't think I should put in all this work because I know it'll just be a temporary fix unless Beth learns how to run the business. On the other hand, it's clear that if things go on the way they are, Beth will have to sell the restaurant for peanuts and basically erase our legacy. Am I the asshole for not jumping in to help? Update 1. I read through your comments, and I think the best one was somebody saying I should get back in there as a consultant. Not only would I not go down with the ship if Beth doesn't listen to me, but it also allows me to set my own pace when it comes to work and improvements. The thing is, my SIL is a nice person, just not good at this business. So, I guess if I really explain the situation to her, she might be open to change. I am a little hesitant though, because when I did work with her, any advice given to Beth went in one ear and out the other. I told Marcus about my idea of coming on as a business consultant, and he said that it was a fine idea, and Beth was invited over for a drink and discussion. When I told Beth about my idea, she was open to it, and from tomorrow, I'm going to shadow her on her daily routine to see what needs to be fixed. It kind of reminds me of the show Kitchen Nightmares. Ha! My husband and I love watching that show, and thankfully, we've never felt like our business would end up on the receiving end of Gordon Ramsay's wrath. But I guess I'll have to get it back in shape before things start going downhill. Update 2. Oh boy! I just finished my first day following Beth around, and then we discussed her management style and plans for the business. I think her more global perspective on cuisine is cool, but she hasn't realized that the townsfolk here aren't open to that. We then reworked the menu and decided to shut the restaurant for a few weeks and get a grand reopening in place. I spoke to every contact I've built in my 8 years in the business, and they're all hyping up the relaunch. At the same time, I told Beth about the ins and outs, rivalries, and alliances that drive small-town business, and that helped her realize the importance of building connections. It's just a small step forward, but hopefully it'll help her make our restaurant more profitable and keep it a staple part of the town for years to come. Update 3. The reopening was a success. I guess word got out that I was back, and that drove the crowd in, but then the food made them stay. I delivered a speech that praised my lovely SIL for learning, growing, and taking my input, and even revealed that one of the top-selling dishes of the day was her idea. It doesn't seem like much, but it sure left an impression on everyone and helped her get her foot in the door in terms of goodwill. Definitely, there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think we're on the right track, and Marcus has been extremely grateful to me for stepping in. With a little more work, I can retire, with my mind at ease about the future of the restaurant. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Just found out my husband invited another woman over to spend the night while I'm away on business. How to proceed? Long-time lurker, first-time poster, throwaway for obvious reasons. I, 24F, leave on a flight in 3 hours for a 5-day business trip. My husband, 28M, is currently sleeping and I'm finishing packing. A text message popped up on his phone saying, "Yeah, I'd love to spend the night. That'll make things so much easier." It was from a friend, 18F, of his who we've had disagreements over before, mostly because he doesn't feel the need to tell me anything about her when they hang out, etc., which he does on his own for all of his male friends. He has a number of female friends and I really don't mind. They're good people and there seem to be boundaries in place. Not with this girl, though. Texts from her frequently pop up throughout the day and as late as 1 or 2 in the morning. I'll admit it, curiosity got the better of me and I read their previous few messages. He invited her over to go on a day trip with him to his favorite place to smoke weed. It's her first time. He then invited her to stay the night before so they could get an early start the next day. Thing is, as we were going to bed last night, I asked him what his plans were while I was gone. He usually makes an effort to do something fun for himself and to get one big honeydew item taken care of. When we were talking about my trip last night, he was very detailed in his plans, down to what he'll be doing each day, which was unusual. But he made no mention of this girl and made it sound as though he was making the drive alone. When I suggested he hang out with one of his friends, he said, "I don't know. I think I could use a quiet weekend in. I'm freaking out a bit. We have been having some trouble and I saw in their messages that he's been talking to her about it a lot. I get needing to have a friend to talk to, but he's always telling me he doesn't want his friends to think poorly of me. Yet from their messages, she obviously does. Reddit, what do I do? How do I handle this? Edit. I should mention that he's had a history of hiding behavior with women from me. Thing is, I'm really easygoing and whenever he tells me so-and-so is coming over, I'm the one who brings home snacks for them. Yet, he's also lied about talking with a female coworker about sex very late at night and sharing a bed with someone he used to hook up with, to name a few. I feel so stupid. Edit 2. Any advice for bringing this up? Part of me wants to confront him before I go. We had a really great, I thought, conversation last night where we decided to take this time apart to figure out what our marriage needs and what each of us needs individually so we can make things work. Apparently, he needs her. The other half of me wants to wait until I know she's there and then ask him what's up. I'm not really sure what to do. I've never been in this position before. Update 1. First off, I just want to thank everyone for being patient while I sort this shit out. As I mentioned in my previous post, I left on a business trip and had actual work to do. I also managed to get my account banned from our /relationship_advice because I suck at Reddit, but thanks to the helpful mods here who helped me get verified. I made the original post on very little sleep and in a very bad headspace and honestly never thought my post would get as much attention as it did. While I read through as many of the comments as I could, I needed a few days to sort through my own thoughts because this situation may be entertainment to you, but it's my real life and has real lasting consequences that I'll have to live with. There is a lot of backstory that's necessary to truly understand the state of our union. So rather than post multiple updates, I've broken it up into sections. Feel free to skip over what you're not interested in and skim what you are. TLDR at the bottom of each section and at the bottom of the post. Confrontation. Thank you to those who responded in the early hours. It was 1:30 a.m. when I posted and I'd gotten a whopping 3 hours of sleep. Needless to say, I was not in the best headspace. Someone gave the advice to tell him, "I'm hurt and disappointed. I'm leaving. You need to fix this." Someone else said to tell him that it doesn't matter how I found out. What matters is that it happened. Thank you for that too. Both those comments really stuck with me, and I lay in bed, waiting for him to wake up, typing out how I would respond to whatever direction our conversation took. Quick side note. We've been together for 4 years and other women have been a constant problem in our relationship. He and many people close to him and me all say he's not the guy to cheat. He's flirty, but he'd never cheat. He's a long-term relationship guy and loyal to the core. That being said, he's had a history of withholding information from me because he thinks it'll make me mad and he doesn't want me to be upset with him. I'm a pretty chill person and honestly wouldn't have cared if he'd asked this girl over and told me about it. In the past, I haven't handled him lying to me very well, hence wanting to have a plan. While I was waiting for him to wake up, I did something I'm not very proud of, because I know he'd lied to me, and I wanted to have proof of the things he told me about her moving forward, especially where I'd be gone and she was supposed to be spending the night. I set up his iMessage messages to come to my iPad. I know all his passwords, so I deleted the email alerts and just added his phone number. I'm not proud of it, but I didn't have cameras at home and needed to know whether he was telling me the truth while I was gone. He woke up and I decided to give him one last chance. As I was gathering my things, I asked him what he had planned while I was gone. He gave a very detailed report of his daily plans, casually leaving out anything about this girl staying the night or going to Colorado with him. I was so livid because just the night before, we'd gotten into a pretty big fight where he said, "And you don't trust me. I've done nothing to deserve it, but you still treat me like I'm sneaking around." That hurt because we've been going to therapy and I thought I'd been doing really well at giving him the benefit of the doubt. I used to check his phone because of the earlier problems we'd had, but haven't done that in months. It made me feel crazy and ashamed at the time, and now here I was, standing in our bedroom, watching my husband lie to me through his teeth. I said, "I know you're lying to me. I know you're not going to Colorado alone, and I know you invited an 18-year-old to spend the night in my bed." And then I just waited, the silence heavy. He took a deep breath and said he had 2 questions. 1. How did I know? It doesn't matter, I know. 2. Did I know during our conversation last night? Quick side note. We've been having a lot of problems lately. We both have mental illnesses which are sometimes exacerbated by the others. He has ADHD, depression, and PTSD, and I'm starting to wonder maybe bipolar of some sort. And I have PTSD, anxiety, and a number of health issues. And he's not very good at controlling his anger. Nothing more physical than throwing things or punching walls, but it is absolutely verbal and emotional abuse. I wasn't sure if it was before, but after a recent fight we had in which I asked him to stop screaming at me so I could finish packing, he said, "You can multitask." Yeah, I realize he sounds like a shitty person, and when he's in that headspace he is. It's very much a Dr. Jekyll / Mr. Hyde situation, and when he's kind and calm, he's the sweetest, most loving person I've met, and that's who I fell in love with. I care for him even at the same time as I know that I don't deserve him. So the night before, we had a very heartfelt, emotional talk in which I told him I wanted him to be happy. I could tell that he wasn't, and I thought he should go home, several thousand miles away, for a few months to figure himself out. I told him I would be his biggest cheerleader and that if we ended up staying together or divorcing, I would always love him and he would always be my family. We've been through some shit both together and separately, and we were both sobbing by the end of it. But here's the kicker. I told him that if he needed another woman to make him happy, I would let him go and support him as a friend. End of side note. As a result, I was probably pretty harsh in my response and said, "No, I didn't know during our conversation last night, and now I feel like an idiot. Like my husband has been an effing a teenager, and I just gave him my blessing." He tried to get defensive and said, "It's not like that. I got really quiet and said, "You're a very smart man. But if you can't see that girl wants to get in your pants, you're a effing idiot. She texts you about her taking bubble baths and you tell her about all our problems when you won't even talk about me with most of your friends. You're telling an 18-year-old about all of our problems." He said he would cancel his plans with her, and I said, "I'm not making that decision. You are. I honestly don't know how you can fix this. I don't care if you go with her at this point, but I'm leaving and I'm hurt and disappointed, and you need to figure out where your priorities are. Because right now your priority isn't your wife, it's your 18-year-old crush." He kept saying he should have told me, but that he didn't want me to feel guilty for wanting to hang out with his friend, and that I should have known that nothing would happen. I asked him if he loved her, and his gut response was, "No, of course not. That's not at all what I'm looking for," and said that most of the time he doesn't even like talking to her every day because she's so immature. I told him he was an idiot if he thought she didn't have feelings for him. He tried to push back, but I told him, "I was 18 once and I liked someone who was 28. We went on a date, but when he found out I was 18, he told me he couldn't see me anymore. I said it was fine and that we could just be friends, but I still tried my hardest to get him to fall for me. He was silent after that for a long time. That was it. He drove me to the airport. He apologized a lot and apologized a lot. I felt a lot of nothing, heartbreak maybe, but there's been so much turmoil in our relationship that I just didn't care anymore. The fallout. We left things the way we'd planned to leave them during the heartfelt conversation the night before. We both planned to take the 5 days I was gone to do some soul searching and figure out what and where we needed to be happy. Then, when I got home, we'd talk it over and make a plan. Well, when my plane landed at my destination, I got a text from my husband saying that he would be moved out of our house by the time I got back and that he's going home to the East Coast. He said he was sorry to leave me to manage our upcoming move on my own, and that he knew I would be better off this way. He said he was taking the car so he could drive back, but that he'd leave me all of the money in our bank accounts except what he needed for gas. He said he was sorry for keeping the information about his friend from me, but that our conversation last night had meant so much to him and had been such a high point of our relationship that to wake up and be accused of cheating was a low point that he could not turn back from. He said he didn't know how to make me believe that his intentions were nothing other than company on the drive with his friend, but that it didn't matter and he would leave me alone. I've never felt that angry, hurt, or desperate before. I was coordinating the travel of more than a dozen other people who were on the flight with me, and it felt like all the wind had been knocked out of me. I wanted to sob and scream, but I couldn't because I was surrounded by people I was supposed to be responsible for. I tried my hardest to gain composure, but a few tears slipped out and I just focused on my breathing. If I'm being honest, I'm not proud of my response. I basically begged him to stay. I'd left feeling like if he needed to leave and we didn't stay together, it would be okay. But knowing that I'd be returning home to an empty house, not getting to say goodbye, and that he was ending things over text after 4 years together was just too much for me. I sounded like a child. I said I needed him, that he was making a stupid mistake, that I deserved more than ending our marriage over text. All the cliches. It was bad. But he was determined to leave, and I had to get over a dozen people to our final destination, so I couldn't keep messaging him. About an hour later, I got a text that he would at least be staying until I got back because of our dogs. Nobody could watch them, so he'd stay until I was home and then he'd go. We planned on having a phone call that night to talk over the specifics, but it never happened. I was too busy and physically/emotionally exhausted. I know from his texts coming to my iPad, but also from him telling me that he canceled with the girl. I know that he also invited her over, which was partly my doing. With the texts I was getting, I didn't want him to be alone. Regardless of if he effed her, then there would be no question. I know that he called his best friend and talked to him about everything for an hour and a half, which was very good. He is a phenomenal human being and has a great marriage. Husband seemed more calm and level-headed after that call. He said he would take the rest of the week to think things through like we planned. We didn't talk much. He texted me every day and I sometimes responded. The week went by quickly and I realized I didn't want to go home. I'm not sure if that's because of all the drama and chaos that was waiting there, or if it's because I no longer want to be married to my husband. I don't know a lot of things anymore and I'm trying to take each day one at a time. I had a small panic attack as he was about to pick me up. I've had worse, but I sat outside at passenger pickup trying to breathe oxygen that wasn't there and wipe tears from my eyes. Maybe it was the anticipation of not knowing what would happen or where we'd stand. I don't know. But when he hugged me, he got all emotional that I was home and I just felt so far away. You know how when you hug someone intimately it feels like your souls are hugging? Felt nothing like that, which was new. Felt like hugging a stranger. So yeah, now I'm home. My flight was delayed, so we both just crashed into bed as soon as we got back. I was asleep when he left for work, so we haven't talked about anything, but I'm expecting we will tonight, and I'll post another update then. I know you may be looking for more resolution, and I wish I had it. I don't even know what I want to do yet. Part of me is ready to leave, to be done, to move on with my life. I'd want to take a good chunk of time and work on myself, but then I'd want to find someone who is transparent with me and who understands and accepts the many parts of me that may be inconvenient but are still me. Part of me wants to give him one more chance, one more opportunity to get his anger under control, communicate well, and make things work. To you reading this, it may seem black and white, but to me living it, it's anything but. I've spent nearly every day with this man for 4 years. We've lived together for 2.5. We have 2 dogs, a house, a life. It's hard to just throw that all away, even if it's what ends up being best for both of us. But that's not a decision I'm willing to make lightly or on a whim. Since I left, he's been much better about following a routine and he hasn't texted the girl at all. He did say that she messaged him at work and that they talked there for a bit. I appreciated the honesty, but not knowing what they talked about has me nervous. If we do stay together, there's a lot of work that will need to be done. I told him he can kiss me on the cheek, but for right now, I can't be vulnerable or open with him or trust him at all because of the anger stuff and things he said to me during that fight. It'll take a lot of time and patience, and I don't know if he's willing to give it. If you want me to read and consider your comment, please don't throw him under the bus. He is absolutely in the wrong in this situation, but he's also been through a lot and I understand his behavior even if I don't excuse it. He is not a piece of shit, even if he may be acting like one. Edit. Forgot to add that while I was gone, I saw messages from them on my iPad in which she admitted that, "Yesterday when you asked me about your hair, I got nervous because I'd rather avoid the confrontation of this conversation, but I just have thought about certain things that completely crossed the line of being friends and I didn't want to put myself in a situation that I might not get out of, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does. I just didn't want to get myself in a tempting situation, so I needed to put up a wall. I'm going to go do some climbing." He responded, "That makes complete sense. I really understand. I knew I shouldn't ask that. Had always just been a very comforting action for me and I was giving in to my sadness, but I admire you for doing what was best for you. I really hope you have a fun time today." When I got back and asked what he did while I was gone, I said, "I really appreciate how you've been so open about things with her, even when they've been uncomfortable. It makes me feel like maybe I can start to trust you again." And then he told me all of that on his own. Basically, he loves getting his head scratched when he's stressed or upset, and asked her to do that, and this conversation ensued. He didn't know that I knew about it, so it was nice that he showed some transparency for once. Update 2. Okay, I've heard everyone loud and clear. I just spent 6 hours in bed reading responses and bawling my eyes out. You're right, every single one of you. He doesn't want a strong, independent woman, and that's what I need to be. I just got off the phone with my mom, who is an incredibly religious person and I assumed would be unsupportive of a divorce, but she said almost verbatim some of the same things you guys said. We made an exit plan both for worst case and best case scenario, and I'll be talking to him tonight when he gets home. In the meantime, I'm going to go get coffee with my friend and try to calm down a bit. I've been putting myself second for so long that I deserve a bit of self-care. Before you freak out, I never unpacked last night. If I need to leave tonight, I have 9 people who have volunteered to be on call to help me move or be emotional support or whatever I need. And all of my valuables are already packed. Update 3. Thank you to everyone who has commented on my last 2 posts. I haven't been able to respond to everyone and I'm still working through all the comments. But the advice, stories, and love you've shared has been overwhelming and absolutely needed. Thank you. Even the people calling me names and calling me out for not being stronger, thank you. It hurt to come to the realization that we can't move forward from this. He's betrayed my trust so many times that I'd need him to verify pretty much anything for a while, and that's no way for either of us to live. The fact of the matter is that we're both pretty broken and have no business being in a relationship with each other or anyone else right now. I truly don't believe he's a terrible person, but he has been a terrible partner. Like many of you said, he can be a good person and not be good for me. Last night I chickened out. I was so scared of losing him forever that I said we should just take a break, have him fly home, and work on ourselves for a bit. There were a lot of tears, but when the conversation was over, I didn't feel better, just stuck. This morning I realized what I'd done. I did this the last time I tried to get out of an abusive relationship and put up safeguards so I could feel comfortable leaving. My husband doesn't deserve to be led on, and I don't deserve to be unable to move on. I read through more of your messages, and I can't thank you all enough for your words of comfort, encouragement, and strength. The thing is, for you it's black and white. For me, my thoughts are so thoroughly clouded by emotions and history, and I have to let that all go. The best thing I can do for both of us is to give up, so this morning I did. I told him that while we could take a break and try again, it would never work. I can never truly trust him again, and he wants me to change things about myself that are things I love and have no desire to change. We've been trying so hard for so long to make things work that we're just too far gone. There were lots of tears, but he took it well. He's agreed to a no-contest divorce and will spend the next few days packing up our house before the lease is up at the end of the month. Some of you may come at me with pitchforks for not screwing him over or breaking up last night or leaving him to deal with the house alone. But that's okay. I'll be staying at my friend's house until my new apartment is ready and really focusing on just working on myself. I won't help him pack unless I have someone with me. Much of the stuff is mine anyway, and I'd rather not leave it behind. You guys are right that my self-confidence has taken a nosedive lately. I have a lot of healing to do before I'm ready to consider love again, and I have 2 appointments scheduled with my therapist this week. This man is not a monster in my book. He's a little boy that needs to grow up. We both made our fair share of mistakes in this relationship, but rather than feeling sorry for myself, I'm choosing to take those lessons and move on. I'm the kind of person who is very good at bouncing back. It's just the getting out that's hard. Thank you all for your help in that. I wish him all the best and simply have no desire to harbor hate in my heart because I know how easy it is for manipulated, abused women to go right back. I've talked a lot with my family and close friends over the last 48 hours. I previously didn't share a lot of what was happening with them because I was embarrassed. Everyone always said we were the perfect couple, and I was so ashamed of all the problems we had. I've informed these people that they are not to let me go back should it come to that, in no uncertain terms. I don't think I'll get to that point, but I just want to be sure. Edit. As a side note, I shared it for me because damn, I needed the loving slap in the face that this sub so gracefully provides. But I also shared it because I hope that anyone else who reads my story and sees parallels in their own life will have the strength and courage to put themselves first. If you're feeling like you need to get out but don't feel strong enough, or like it's bad enough, or like you can't make it to the other side, feel free to message me. We're in this together. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I never thought I'd be the one writing one of these posts. I've been reading this sub for years, always thinking, thank God that's not me. Whenever I saw the really messy situations, well, here I am now. I'm still processing everything that's happened and honestly don't know what to do anymore. For some background, my boyfriend, Mark, and I have been together for about 5 years now. We met during sophomore year of college when we were both at this stupid frat party that neither of us wanted to be at. We ended up sitting in the corner, making fun of everyone else there, and that was pretty much it. We've been together ever since. We moved in together after graduation and have talked about getting married someday, though we're not in any rush. Our relationship has been pretty solid. We rarely have serious fights, have similar interests and goals, and generally enjoy each other's company. Sometimes I wonder if I got into a serious relationship too young, but that thought usually passes quickly because Mark is genuinely a good guy, and we work well together. Our mutual best friend, John, has been in our lives pretty much from the beginning. Mark actually knew him from high school, but the 3 of us became inseparable after I met him at another party during college. John's definitely the adventurous one of our group, always traveling somewhere new, trying weird foods, and bringing back stories that sound completely made up but are usually true. He works in tech or something that lets him work remotely, so he's constantly jetting off to random countries for weeks or months at a time. He's single and kind of a free spirit, which is probably why he and Mark get along so well. So, the other night, Mark and I went to this birthday party for John's sister, Katie. We were super excited because John had been in Russia for like a month, doing who knows what. He claims it was just for fun and exploring. But with John, you never really know. And he had literally just flown in from the airport to the party. I think he'd been home for maybe 2 hours before heading to his sister's thing. When we finally saw him, it was all hugs and, "I missed you guys," and catching up on the surface level stuff that had happened while he was gone. The party was pretty packed with Katie's friends and family, and after hanging out with everyone for about an hour, John suggested we sneak off to his place to catch up properly. This wasn't unusual for us. We're all kind of introverted and get drained at big gatherings. Everyone who knows us jokes about how we're always the first to leave any party. John's sister didn't even look surprised when we said we were heading out early. She just rolled her eyes and said something like, "Typical," before giving John another hug. John's apartment is only like 15 minutes from where the party was, so we all piled into an Uber and headed there. His place was surprisingly clean for someone who had just returned from a month abroad. I guess he has a cleaning service or something. We started out just chilling in his living room, John telling us about Russia and showing us pictures on his phone of all these old buildings and weird food he'd tried. Mark kept asking about Russian women, which was annoying, but whatever. John was being John, saying they were gorgeous but scary. We'd been there maybe an hour when John casually takes out this little capsule and swallows it with some water. Mark asked what it was, and John goes, "Oh, it's just this plant-based stimulant I picked up in Russia. Natural energy booster, helps with the jet lag." He looked totally normal saying this, like he was just taking a vitamin or something. Then he offered us each one, super casual, like he was offering mints or something. At first, we both said no, and Mark was teasing him about always bringing back weird shit from his trips. John's always coming back with strange protein bars or energy drinks or whatever from different countries, so this wasn't out of character. Last time he went to Japan, he brought back these caffeine gummies that tasted like feet but kept you awake for hours. The conversation kind of shifted to John defending himself, saying, "Dude, I got them from an actual pharmacy there, and they let me bring them through customs on the plane. How bad could they be?" He showed us this bottle with Russian writing and a bunch of capsules inside. Mark examined them and declared them totally harmless but probably useless, and somehow we both ended up taking one. Mark took his first, then I figured, what the hell? And took one too. It's hard to explain how normal this felt in the moment. We've known John forever, and he's never done anything to hurt us. This was just another one of his weird foreign supplements. Or so we thought. We went back to talking about his trip, and I pretty much forgot about taking the capsule for a while. We ordered some pizza because none of us had really eaten much at the party and were halfway through it when things started feeling different. At first, I just felt really good, like unusually good. Everything seemed a bit brighter and more interesting. The pizza tasted amazing, way better than it should have. I noticed that I was talking more than usual and laughing at everything. I thought maybe I was just in a really good mood. After a while, I excused myself to the bathroom. I splashed some water on my face, which felt incredible against my skin, and when I looked in the mirror, I noticed my pupils were massive, like scary big. The bathroom also felt weirdly warm and cozy, and the towels looked incredibly soft and amazing. I went back to the living room, feeling a bit concerned, and told the guys something was up. That's when John dropped it on us. "Okay, guys, don't hate me, but there was some Molly in those pills I gave you." I fucking froze. "MDMA? Are you kidding me?" I started panicking because I've never done anything harder than weed, and even that's just occasionally when Mark and I are watching movies or something. I've always been pretty straight edge, not in an annoying way. I just never felt the need to experiment much. Mark seemed totally fine at first and went all, "Not cool, man," at John, but he didn't seem as shocked as I was. We left pretty quickly, with John apologizing behind us as we walked out the door. Mark and I sat on a bench outside John's building, trying to process what had happened. Then Mark started feeling it, too. He got this goofy smile on his face and kept touching my hair, saying how soft it was. And here's the weird part. It became really hard to stay mad at John. Everything just felt so good. We were both suddenly feeling amazing, and all the anger just melted away. I felt this incredible connection to Mark, like I understood him perfectly in that moment. Then Mark's phone rings, and it's John, still apologizing, and somehow we end up inviting him to join us. I still don't really understand how that happened, but one minute we were mad at him and the next we were telling him to come down. The three of us walked to this park nearby and just talked for hours. I mean, hours. It felt like the most meaningful conversations we'd ever had, even though looking back it was probably just normal shit that seemed profound because we were high. I remember John telling us about how lonely he sometimes feels despite all his traveling and how he envies our relationship. Mark talked about his fears of being too settled at our age and missing out on experiences. I apparently went on some long rant about how much I loved both of them and how they were the most important people in my life. Pretty embarrassing in hindsight, but it felt so real at the time. At some point, it got cold. It must have been like 2 or 3 in the morning by then, and we discovered that hugs and physical contact felt incredible on this stuff. We were all huddled together on this park bench like penguins, and the conversation somehow turned to sex. I don't even remember how it came up. I think John was talking about this girl he hooked up with in Moscow or something, and then he made this comment, wondering if Mark and I had ever thought about inviting a third person into our bedroom. I didn't really pick up on what he was suggesting and just laughed it off, saying something stupid like, "Woo, that would be exciting." But Mark took it more seriously and said something like, "Maybe, but it's hard to find the right person for that." Then John casually drops, "Well, I'd join you guys if you wanted." Normally, this would have been super awkward and weird, but in that moment, everything just seemed fine and cool. We kind of laughed it off and moved on to other topics. I remember thinking it was just John being John. He's always saying outrageous stuff to get a reaction, so I didn't think he was serious. We finally left the park when the sun started coming up. John walked us back to our apartment, which is about a 20-minute walk from the park. We were all coming down by then, feeling tired but still oddly connected. We hugged goodbye, and John apologized again for not telling us about the MDMA. I remember telling him it was okay and that I had a good time, which is so fucked up looking back on it. The next day, I felt like absolute garbage. Not just physically, though I had a killer headache and felt dehydrated as hell, but mentally. Once the drug was completely out of my system, I was so angry at John for drugging us without our consent. Like, that's seriously fucked up no matter how you look at it. What if one of us had a bad reaction? What if I had some condition I didn't know about? Mark was more chill about it, which bothered me. He kept saying things like, "Well, nothing bad happened, and it was actually kind of fun once we got past the initial shock." I couldn't believe he wasn't more upset about our supposed best friend literally drugging us. When I finally saw John later that day, he came over to check on us. Bringing Gatorade and breakfast burritos like that would fix everything. I let him have it. We had a huge fight where I told him exactly how violated I felt, and he kept apologizing and saying he thought we'd enjoy it and just wouldn't have tried it otherwise. He said he'd done it with other friends before and they'd all had good experiences. That just made me more mad. The fight got pretty intense. I was yelling, John was desperately apologizing, and Mark was kind of stuck in the middle trying to defuse things. At one point, I told John to get out of our apartment, and he looked like I'd slapped him. He left quickly after that, and Mark got mad at me for being too harsh. We ended up fighting too, with me accusing him of not taking this seriously enough and him saying I was overreacting. We eventually calmed down, but things felt tense between us. Despite this fight, the three of us still hung out every day before John was supposed to leave for Germany. He's going there for some work thing, I think a conference or something. Things were tense at first, but we've been friends for so long that we kind of just pushed through it. John was extra nice to me, like he was walking on eggshells, and I let him know several times that while I was still friends with him, I would never trust him the same way again. He seemed to accept that, and we reached a sort of uneasy truce. We did a bunch of our usual activities. On the surface, things seemed almost normal again, but there was definitely an undercurrent of weirdness. I caught John and Mark exchanging looks a few times when they thought I wasn't paying attention, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Then yesterday, completely out of nowhere, Mark tells me he's been thinking about John's suggestion. We were just sitting on the couch, watching TV after dinner, and he pauses the show and turns to me with this serious expression. At first, I didn't even know what he was talking about. Then he clarifies that he's been considering the threesome idea. He and John have already discussed it, and now they're just waiting for me to say yes. What the actual fuck? I just stared at him, not even sure if he was serious. I couldn't believe they had talked about this behind my back, especially after everything that had happened. Mark started rambling about how it could be a fun experience and how he trusted John more than anyone else if we were going to try something like this. He said John had experience with threesomes before and knew how to make sure everyone was comfortable. He even suggested it could bring us all closer after the MDMA incident. I was so shocked I couldn't even form a coherent response. Then I had to leave for work. I was already running late, so I just said we'd talk about it when I got home. But I've been finding excuses not to go home all day, telling Mark I had to work late, then that I was getting drinks with coworkers. Now I'm sitting at a coffee shop typing this instead of facing him. I don't know what to do. On one hand, I got into a relationship pretty young and sometimes wonder if I'm missing out on experiences. Before Mark, I'd only been with 2 other guys, and neither relationship was very serious. And if I were ever going to try something like this, it would make sense to do it with someone we trust rather than a stranger. Plus, I'm not gonna lie, John is attractive. He's got this whole adventurous, slightly dangerous vibe that's always been intriguing. I've always had a tiny crush on him. Mark knows and teases me about it sometimes, but I never would have acted on it. But on the other hand, this is our best friend. What if it makes everything weird? And I still can't get past the fact that this all started because John literally drugged us. That seems like a massive red flag that I shouldn't just ignore. But Mark seems weirdly unbothered by that part, which makes me wonder if he knew about it beforehand. Did they plan this together? He's never mentioned wanting to try anything like this before, but maybe he was afraid to bring it up. I've never been in this situation before, and I have no idea what to do. Any advice would be appreciated. Help. Update. Some of you got things completely wrong about my relationship with Mark. But whatever, I'm not a doormat like some of you suggested, and no, we don't have an obviously toxic relationship. 5 years of mostly happy times doesn't suddenly become toxic because of one fucked up situation. Anyway, a lot has happened since my original post, so I'll try to update you all on where things stand. Sorry in advance for the length, but I figure you guys deserve the full story after all your advice. First off, I want to thank everyone who took the time to give me advice. You guys really helped me feel less alone in this mess, and I honestly had no one else to turn to. I couldn't exactly talk to my regular friends about this. Hey, so my best friend drugged me and now he and my boyfriend want to have a threesome. Isn't exactly casual brunch conversation. So after posting this and reading through the first wave of comments, I realized I needed to take some time to really think about what I wanted to do. I was still at the coffee shop when Mark started texting me asking when I'd be home. I ignored him and texted my coworker instead, asking if I could crash at her place. Thankfully, she said yes without asking too many questions, though I did give her a very watered-down version of events. Just that Mark and I had a fight and I needed space. I ignored all the calls and texts from both Mark and John that night. Mark called like 6 times and sent a bunch of messages asking where I was and if I was okay. John texted twice, asking if everything was all right and saying Mark seemed worried. I turned my phone off eventually because I couldn't deal with it. The next morning, I turned my phone back on and texted both guys to meet me at this cafe downtown at 10 a.m. I figured a public place would be better for this conversation, both to keep things from getting too heated and to give me an easy escape if needed. I spent most of the night thinking about what I wanted to say, even wrote some of it down so I wouldn't forget anything important. When I got to the cafe about 10 minutes early, they were already there and had ordered my favorite drink. I don't know if that was sweet or manipulative at this point. They both looked like they hadn't slept much. Mark had bags under his eyes, and John's hair was a mess, which is unusual for him since he's normally pretty put together. As soon as I sat down, they both started talking at once, but I held up my hand and told them right away that I needed to say everything I had to say without interruptions. They mostly respected this, though they did try to cut in a few times when I said something they disagreed with. I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember my exact words, but basically, I told John, "What you did was completely fucked up. Giving someone drugs without their consent is never okay, no matter what your intentions were or how it turned out. I don't care if you thought we would enjoy it or if you were frustrated that we wouldn't try it willingly. That's our choice to make, not yours. Do you realize you could have put us in danger? What if one of us had a bad reaction? What if we'd gotten stopped by cops? What if I had some medical condition you didn't know about? You violated our trust in one of the most fundamental ways possible, and I'm honestly not sure if I can ever fully trust you again. Then I turned to Mark and said, "And you? I'm not okay with how unbothered you seem by all this. It makes me wonder if you knew about the MDMA beforehand. Were you in on it? I'm even starting to think you guys planned this just to get me to agree to a threesome, which I do not want to happen. I don't understand how you can be so casual about your best friend drugging us. And I'm also not okay that you two discussed this threesome idea behind my back instead of including me in the conversation from the beginning. Did you think you could just present it as a done deal and I'd go along with it? Do you not respect me enough to include me in discussions about my own sex life? I don't trust either of you right now, and I need some space. You both crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." I was shaking through most of this and couldn't really look at them directly. My voice cracked a few times, which was embarrassing, but I got through it. By the end, I was sweating like crazy, but I got it all out. I probably said more than that, but those were the main points. After I finished, I told Mark he should stay with John until John leaves for Germany because I needed time alone in our apartment to think. When Mark asked if we were breaking up, I honestly told him I didn't know yet. Their initial reaction was pretty defensive. John kept saying things like, "It wasn't that serious," and "You enjoyed it though, right?" While Mark was insisting that I was overreacting and that they would never do anything to hurt me intentionally. That just made me more angry. They weren't even listening to what I was saying about consent and trust. But when they realized I was dead serious about needing space and potentially ending my relationship with Mark, they both changed their tune quickly. John looked like he was about to cry, saying stuff like, "Forget the stupid threesome idea," and "I wish I could take it all back." He kept repeating that he valued our friendship more than anything and would do whatever it took to make things right. Mark seemed genuinely shocked by everything I was saying, like he hadn't realized how serious this all was to me. He kept repeating that he would never let anything harm me and that I've known him forever and should know better. He swore that he didn't know about the MDMA beforehand and was just as surprised as I was. When I asked why he wasn't more upset about it then, he mumbled something about just trying to make the best of a bad situation and not wanting to ruin our friendship with John. Weak excuses, if you ask me. I stayed firm, though. I told them I needed at least a week without any contact from either of them. I said I'd reach out when I was ready to talk again and not to call or text me before then. I also made it clear that I wasn't making any decisions right then. I just needed time to process everything. Before I left, Mark asked for a hug and after hesitating, I let him. It was awkward and stiff, not our usual comfortable hug. He whispered, "Please don't leave me," which made me feel like shit, even though I'm not the one who fucked up here. John tried to hug me, too, but I just shook my head and left. I went straight to our apartment and packed a bag with enough clothes for about a week. I didn't want to stay there if Mark decided to ignore my request and come home. I'm staying with my coworker for now. She's been great about the whole thing, even though I still haven't told her the full story. Later that day, I got a text from Mark saying, "John canceled his trip to Germany, so I'll stay with him until you want me to move back," followed by, "If you ever do, no matter what you think, just try to remember I love you more than anything." I haven't responded and don't plan to anytime soon. The next few days were weird. I threw myself into work and tried not to think about the whole situation too much, but it's hard when it's all I can think about. I keep going back and forth on what to do. Sometimes I think I'm overreacting and should just forgive them both. After all, nothing truly terrible happened, and they do seem genuinely sorry. Other times, I feel like this revealed something fundamental about both of them that I can't unsee or ignore. I did break down and read some of their texts. After a few days, John sent a long apology letter to both my phone and email, saying he realized how serious what he did was and that he was going to seek therapy to figure out why he thought it was okay to violate boundaries like that. He said he'd been doing some reading about consent and realized how wrong he was. Seems sincere, But who knows? Mark's messages have been more emotional and less reflective. Lots of, "I miss you and please talk to me," and "I'm so sorry." He hasn't specifically acknowledged what he did wrong, though, just that he's sorry I'm upset. That bothers me. My coworker thinks I should break up with Mark. She says, even without knowing the specifics, the fact that I felt the need to leave our apartment suggests this is a bigger deal than I'm admitting to myself. So that's where things stand. I still don't know what I'm going to do. Having that initial conversation lifted a huge weight off my shoulders, but I still have so many questions. I won't be able to post another update after this because of sub-rules. So I guess this is it for now. I might not have closure yet, but I wanted to let you all know what happened. Again, thank you all so much for your help and support through this. It really means a lot. I never expected to be in this situation, but knowing that strangers on the internet had my back made it a little easier to face. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My parents called me their accident child and favored my sister until she left. Years later, we reunited at my engagement and took legal action when they tried to ruin my wedding. I am in a sloppy situation with my parents and seek advice on the same. I'll explain what happened with some context first to keep things clear. So, I, 26F, am the younger one in a family of 4, consisting of my mother, my father, and my older sister, Megan, 35F. I come from a wealthy family. Both my parents have been handling a well-established family business, so finances have never been an issue. My birth was an accident, which is why there is such a huge age gap between me and Megan, and my parents sure have treated me like one for most of the time. Since my parents were already doing well with the business, they expected their children to be just like them, work-focused and high-achieving. Megan has always been their special child, the one who excelled in everything she put her hands to, whereas I have been the average Joe who is good at most things, but not as good as Megan. Due to the age gap between us, I haven't been a part of most of Megan's life, and she didn't put the effort to be there for me either. There wasn't anything wrong between us, just that the distance was never bridged from either end. Anyway, I had grown used to the ignorance and favoritism towards Megan from my family, so I stayed aloof. My parents didn't care about how I was as long as they weren't going to hear about it from someone else, so I made sure I stayed out of trouble at the cost of my freedom. When I was in elementary school, Megan had passed high school and went to a very prestigious college. With her gone, all my parents' focus shifted towards me, like I was their new project. But because I had grown in a habit of staying distant, their attempts to connect with me soon turned into them pestering me into spending time with them. I was extremely frustrated by all this, but because I didn't have an option, I decided to let it go and spend some obligatory time with them every day. They tried their best to have a good relationship with me, but I over the years had realized what a bunch of narcissists they were and had decided to move out as soon as I could. During this time, Megan had graduated and was working at a tech company. She met her then-boyfriend, let's call him Mark, at the company, and Mark was her boss. When my parents got wind of Megan's relationship, they were more than pleased, thinking Mark must be from a rich background as well to get such a high post. But on meeting him, they realized he wasn't as rich as them. To clear things out, he came from a wealthy background as well, but not as wealthy as our family. This somehow tarnished their reputation, and they started asking Megan to leave him. When she didn't agree, they changed the tactic and instead went and talked to Mark about how brave it was of him to accept having no kids in the future for Megan. Megan had been set on being child-free since she started dating, and my parents were on point about Mark knowing nothing of it. Mark was shocked by this revelation and, as expected, he broke up with Megan soon after. Mark was the one Megan wanted to marry and was going to tell him about not wanting children soon after the families met. But this betrayal from her own parents didn't sit right with her, so she decided to stay away from home as much as possible. I wasn't a part of this drama but felt extremely bad for her and tried to contact her via email because I didn't have her number, but after getting no responses a few times, I stopped as well. My parents were surely angry with Megan for abandoning them like this, but didn't let the news go outside our immediate family. I was by this time also about to pass high school and had decided to follow Megan's footsteps of leaving as soon as I got the chance. I had worked pretty hard and hence also got a scholarship to my preferred college, which was a 2-hour ride from my hometown. so I was financially independent as soon as I was done with school. My parents did try to convince me to take money from them for my education, which I am sure was an attempt to hold it over my head later, but I politely declined and went on with life. Over the next few years, my parents were more involved with me than with Megan. I assumed something must have gone down between them. I didn't entertain them much, but they didn't get the hint and actually showed up at my college on 2 separate occasions, but stopped after I sternly asked them to not, and in exchange, I offered to show up at their pretentious social events once in a while. As I mentioned before, my parents had kept their fallout with Megan a family secret, but this time around at their party, I realized that they had started to badmouth her in front of their friends and family. Because I knew the whole story and how Megan wasn't in the wrong, I found their behavior extremely toxic. I could have confronted them about it, but knowing how irrationally they would have reacted, I decided to remove myself from the situation and stay as far as I could from my parents for good. As soon as I got a job after graduation, which was a few months away during my final year, I met Joe. Joe was in my batch and we had noticed each other a few times but got close during a group presentation. He was the nicest and smartest guy I had known, so I approached him, and we soon got into a relationship. On getting to know him more, I got to know that he was abandoned by his parents and had lived in foster homes all his life. He worked extremely hard by doing part-time jobs during school and was able to afford to go to college just because his grandma left him college money in her will. He was extremely bright and had been placed with one of the top packages during our final year placements. I had also gotten a job in the same place as him, so we both decided to live together. The city we were moving to was way far from my hometown, so it was a win-win situation for me. Megan was also living in the same city, so the chances of me bumping into her were extremely high, but because she had kept her distance from me all this while, I decided to not inform her about my move. I told my parents about the job at my graduation ceremony and introduced Joe as a friend because I knew how investigative they would become if they knew he was my boyfriend. My parents weren't happy about me shifting to such a faraway place, but the way I spoke made it clear that I wasn't really affected by what they thought of it, which they realized. They honestly wouldn't have cared less if Megan was still in our life, but with her gone, I, their accidental child, was their only hope, and so they complied without much discussion. The next few years were good, with Joe being an absolute delight, and I knew he was the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I did talk to my parents on the phone occasionally, and they had started pestering me to find a guy to get married to because otherwise they wished to set me up with one of our family friends' sons. I still hadn't told them about Joe and me because I very clearly remembered what had gone down with Megan and Mark and didn't want the same fate for myself. Joe proposed to me soon after we were both 25, and I obviously accepted. He knew every nitty-gritty of my dynamic with my family, so I was surprised when he wanted me to tell my parents about our engagement. I told him it was best if we eloped and had a reception for his friends and family, as I was fine with not having my side of the family involved. Being the kind man he is, Joe suggested that we tell my parents about it, giving them the benefit of the doubt that because they had been good to me during the past years, they might have moved on from their class-related prejudices and would accept our relationship. I knew very well how this would go down, but for Joe's sake, I decided to give it a shot. We had plans to visit my hometown a month after my engagement, and unexpectedly a week prior to that both Joe and I ran into Megan, which hadn't happened once in the 3 years I had lived there. We were surprised to see each other and honestly didn't know how to react, but Joe broke the awkwardness by introducing himself to Megan. Once she was able to take everything in, she immediately hugged me and asked us if we wanted to go out for lunch with her. We were running errands, and so we said yes. The conversation we had was full of surprises, but I'll talk about this later. We exchanged numbers and decided to stay in touch. So anyway, Joe and I went to meet my parents. They were extremely surprised to see my friend Joe accompany me, but once they saw the engagement ring on my hand, things were pretty clear. Their reaction was more of a surprise than a shock, so irrespective of all odds, I got a little optimistic about them actually accepting Joe. My dad took the initiative and started talking to Joe, asking about his life and future plans, to which he replied very politely. Dad looked impressed until the topic of his childhood came up. As soon as he began telling them about his traumatic days before his teenage, both my parents' expressions changed from excited to disappointed. My mom even gave me a look while he was talking, and I think he noticed, because after that, Joe got extremely quiet for the rest of the day. When we both were about to sleep, I asked him if he was okay and he brushed it off saying it was fine. We left the next day with my parents asking me to call them as soon as I got back. I knew Joe was hurt by my parents' reaction, and as much as I wanted to say, "I told you so," I acted empathetically and told him that no matter what happened, he was going to be the one I wanted to marry, and that it didn't matter what my parents thought of our relationship. This statement did change his mood a little bit, and we reached our city. I decided to call my parents like they had asked me to, and to be honest, one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to them was to give them a peace of mind because no one could disrespect my fiancée like that. I called them and their expected, "How could you be with someone from a low-class category?" rant began. They kept telling me how I wouldn't be able to adjust with him because I had been raised with all these riches, completely forgetting about how I had been living with him for so long and that they could find a better match for me. I stayed quiet during all this, and once they were done, I told them just one thing: that they weren't the bosses of me and no one could stop me from marrying Joe. Infuriated, they cut the call. What happened next is why I am sharing this incident in the first place. After their call with me, my parents decided to get in touch with Megan after almost 5 years. I got to know about this from Megan herself. They knew about where she worked, got her email from the company website, and wrote an email from Dad's side saying it was extremely urgent and that she should contact them ASAP. Megan, thinking that someone must have been in a serious condition medically, decided to call Dad, who asked her to come home as soon as she could. She told him that she wanted to know it right then on the phone, but Dad wasn't clear and said that he would tell her everything once she came home. Sensing the stress in our father's voice, she took the next flight home. When she reached, she was welcomed with a hug from my mother, who was crying hysterically. Dad escorted her to the living room and asked her to sit down. Thinking that someone had passed, she insisted strongly on knowing what was going on. That's when my parents broke the news to her that I had decided to cut contact with them over my poor boyfriend. They didn't know that Joe and Megan had already met and went on talking about how ill-mannered he was, that I misunderstood and completely negated their advice to leave him when their intention was to keep me safe. Megan was shocked at how low they could stoop just to control our lives and called them out immediately. Confused about why Megan wasn't siding with them, they asked her what was wrong, and she told them everything about how she knew it was them who broke her and Mark. For context, the day Megan and I met, I got to know that she hadn't been in a relationship since her breakup with Mark. I sympathized and told her that it wasn't right of Mom and Dad to bring up her wanting to be childless in front of Mark. She told me that she had no idea that Mom and Dad had initiated the conversation and had thought that Mark brought up something about children, and our parents answered honestly. Megan was extremely angry but had moved on in life to raise this issue. But now, when our parents were trying to do the same thing with me, she decided to show them what was up. When Megan started talking, my parents got quiet pretty quickly because they knew their crocodile tears weren't going to work anymore. She went on for an hour or so, talking about every little thing our parents had done to control our childhood. Her catharsis was obviously not well received by our parents, who tried to calm her down by claiming that they were protecting us. Megan was done with them and told them that she didn't want to be in any contact with them from now on, and that any attempts of contact from their side could lead to a harassment case from her side. My parents tried their best to convince her to not cut contact with them, but it was a little too late. Megan called me when she reached back home and told me everything that went down. She also advised me to stay vigilant as Mom and Dad were going to come after me now. I thanked her and will be meeting her this weekend. She was absolutely right because I got a call from Mom soon after asking for forgiveness and helping them fix things with Megan. I told them that I wasn't going to clean their mess, and it was because of their constant manipulative tactics that Megan had decided to cut them off finally and for good. Mom got extremely angry and accidentally blamed me for causing the chaos, saying that I had proven by this that I was indeed an accident. It triggered a lot of childhood trauma, and I immediately cut the call and blocked her. She must have realized how vile that attack was, as I got a few missed calls and texts from Dad asking for forgiveness for whatever had gone down and asking for a meetup to sort things out in person. I am honestly over their fake facade to have a family and save face in front of their posh community. I didn't respond to him and was in a pretty bad mood the whole day, and the thing Mom mentioned about it being my fault has stuck with me. Am I the a-hole for telling Megan about my parents' involvement and breaking her relationship, which led to her officially having no contact with them? Update 1. Hi. Thanks to everyone for such an overwhelming response to the original post. I didn't expect it to reach these many people, and I truly am grateful for all the advice given. I am writing this update after 2 days. So, as I mentioned previously, I was pretty bummed out after the call with my mom. Joe noticed this and took me out for dinner. Later, he made me understand that there was no point holding on to what my mom said because over the years she has proved how flaky she is. He also apologized to me for not listening to what I said in the first place and insisting on visiting my parents. I told him it was okay, thanked him for taking time off to deal with my situation, and that he would be my priority no matter what. The next day, I met Megan and had a long chat with her. We bonded over how our parents had treated us like objects for the show since the beginning. She told me what Mom and Dad had said about Joe, and as angry as I was, I let it go because conversing with them over this just wasn't worth it. I asked her if she went no contact with them because of what I had told, and she said that she had been thinking about it for a long time. Not like they had been in touch in the last few years. The last straw for her was that they called her for their petty, "We will lose our reputation," and did not even consider the possibility that she was busy with her own life. She realized at that moment that they didn't care about me or her as long as they had someone to hang around at their convenience. I agreed to everything she was saying, and it kind of made it up in the back of my mind that I would also be cutting contact with my parents for good. Megan and I hit off so well that we decided to make these conversations a regular thing because I live in a different city. Thankfully, I've been away from the gossip that must have gone around after Megan's feuds with our parents. I haven't received any calls or texts from them so far. It looks like they have decided to not contact me for good, and I sincerely hope it stays that way. Update 2. A lot has gone down since the last update. I'll explain in detail. I am writing this update a month after the last one. So after talking to Megan, I talked to Joe about our wedding and realized that I wanted a wedding as long as I didn't have to deal with my family's drama. So we decided that I would not invite my parents. Not inviting them to the wedding would also be my way of making it clear that I wanted no contact with them. I hadn't gotten any calls so far from them, so it all made complete sense. We made our wedding announcement via Facebook as a save the date for close friends and family. My parents were locked. Megan was actually the first one to get an invite, and she accepted to be a part of the wedding as a bridesmaid. The preparations were going fine until one day I got a spam mail from Dad's company email. It started with something about the company and soon transitioned into him apologizing profusely because he got to know about my wedding from one of my friend's parents. He mentioned how he thought about my relationship with Joe and how they were too hard on him. He begged for a second chance to get things straight. I obviously denied it in a reply and told him clearly that it was too little too late and blocked the email. The week next to the announcement, Megan and I were out shopping and discussing my plans for the wedding when I got a call from my maternal grandma. Granny and I have been extremely close during our childhood, and she was also invited to the wedding. When I picked up the call, she began by screaming at me for pushing my parents aside from such an important event in my life. I hadn't expected such a bizarre reaction from her and actually froze while she kept calling me evil for doing this. Megan noticed how shocked I looked and took the phone from my hands. She heard every vile thing Grandma was saying and decided to give her a piece of her mind. She told Grandma that she should just not come to the wedding if that's how she thinks of me. Grandma realized it was Megan and got quiet, knowing that there was no escape for her. Megan asked her to not interfere now when she couldn't take a stand for us when our parents treated us like objects, and that it was disgraceful coming from her. Grandma told Megan that Mom had called her and told her how I shunned them off because my fiancé didn't like them, which was why she was yelling at me. Megan wasn't the one who took excuses for an answer and told Grandma that she was old enough to not fall for Mom's tactics, and that she would attend the wedding now only when she apologized to me, and cut the call. I almost immediately got a call back from her, and she begged me to not be kicked from the wedding, to which I agreed after she apologized. This incident made me realize that although Megan and I weren't close during our childhood, she still was my elder sister who would be there for me. I made up my mind right then and asked Megan if she would walk me down the aisle. She got emotional and we both shed a few tears, after which she agreed. I went back home and told Joe about everything that went down, and he was happier than me to have Megan playing such a crucial part in my wedding. Things have been quiet so far, but knowing my parents, I just hope that the wedding takes place successfully without any added tantrums. Update 3. Hi, since a lot of you asked about what the situation was, I am writing this update after 3 months and this will be the last one. Starting with the good news, Joe and I got married the last week. The wedding was a mixed bag of events. I'll elaborate. So as expected, my parents did pull a final stunt in a post explaining that side of the story, which no one asked for. After they posted their side, blaming me and Megan for being a thankless child who was abandoning their parents in old age, and also commented on our character. Things mentioned in the post were pretty vile. The people who didn't know about our feud also got to know about it through this post. A lot of relatives whom I had invited to the wedding took my parents' side and sent me messages asking me to make amends. In reply to them, I made a post stating very clearly that anyone who wants to take my parents' side shall be disinvited from the wedding, and let's just say that the invitees list got short from my side. When Joe read the post, he got extremely angry at how far my parents had gone and suggested filing a case of defamation against them. I didn't want to get into anything with them this close to the wedding. I got a call from Megan, crying about how bad things had been for her after the post because her socials and emails were flooded with texts calling her names. All I could do at the moment was console her, but I had made up my mind to take some action after the wedding. Our wedding was a destination wedding solely for the reason that my parents couldn't show up at the venue and create a mess. They did try to contact Joe this time, but he just ignored them, and we went ahead with our wedding, which was as beautiful as I imagined it to be. Only the people I actually wanted that were present. When Megan gave me away to Joe, another good thing that happened was that Megan and one of the groomsmen found each other good company, and she told me she saw them getting together. I got to know from Joe soon after that the guy and Megan had decided to date, which we all were extremely happy about. Once Joe and I came back from our honeymoon, I decided to call Megan and ask her if she wanted to send a joint notice to our parents about the defamation case, and she immediately agreed to it. The post had now been deleted, but fortunately Joe had taken a screenshot of it, and our lawyer was satisfied enough with that as evidence. My parents literally went hysterical when our lawyer called them and informed them about the petition. I got a lot of calls from my grandma, but I decided to ignore them, knowing what they were about. The next day was the first time in months that I saw my parents. They looked exhausted, but I didn't care because it was them who caused the drama. They mentioned how they had deleted the post realizing what they had done was wrong, but our lawyer mentioned to them the damages caused to Megan and my reputation and made it clear that it would cost them a lot of money and time for the damages. My dad's face changed colors immediately after hearing this and begged to settle it out of court. Megan was adamant about making them suffer, whereas I just wanted to get over with them as soon as I could. On talking, Joe and I convinced Megan to not sue them in return for a public apology and a written contract signed by them stating that they wouldn't be contacting me or Megan again or they would have to pay for it legally. They asked for some time to think about it and the very next day responded positively to the offer. There was a full-fledged apology on both their personal and business accounts. They also signed the contract, which made us legally unrelated to them. My mom looked pretty sorry and did apologize for it a few times before signing the contract, but it was too late to make amends. Many of our relatives and acquaintances who had bashed us previously have been apologizing, but I have decided to stay away from drama and have gone off social media for a while. So this Reddit post is the first thing I will be posting in a long time. Edit. I saw the comments on this update asking about how our personal lives have been. Thank you for the concern. So for a month after the apology, Joe and I were pretty occupied at first responding to calls and such, but then, as mentioned, took a break from social media to focus on our lives, which has been good. I recently found out that I'm pregnant with our first child, and the joy of bringing new life has kept us both a good kind of busy. Megan also faced some issues after the apology, and more so because she was the one who verbally took a stand against them, but she dealt with it pretty well. Also, she and Joe's groomsmen, whom she liked, have been dating for 2 months now and are going steady. I informed her recently about my pregnancy and she has been going crazy, the good kind, over the prospect of becoming an aunt. If things go well, she and her boyfriend will be getting engaged soon. My parents have been away, as the contract mentioned, and I haven't cared enough to know their whereabouts. I did visit my grandma the previous week and she mentioned something about mom going to therapy after whatever happened, but I brushed it off and she got the hint. I do understand why some people in the comments have previously mentioned that cutting off contact with my parents might have been too harsh, but after all I had gone through during my childhood and how my and Megan's relationship was put on the line just because of my parents, It wasn't possible for me to forgive and accept them after a half-hearted apology. Now on to the next story. Story 8. After 9 years in prison, I lost contact with the love of my life. Found her online, but was afraid to contact her. Finally did, and now she's coming to visit me. Hi guys. When I was a university student, I fell in love with Daria, not her real name, obviously. She was the little sister of my best friend, so I considered her off-limits, but my crush on her persisted and grew. She's one of those beautiful, brilliant people who is alive and breathing to make the world a better place. How could I not be drawn to that? One day, she told me had feelings for me, and to my relief, my best friend didn't have a problem with me dating his sister, either. So for 2 wonderful years, Daria was my girlfriend. I should have asked her to marry me. I don't know why I didn't. I suppose I thought I had all the time in the world. We were young, and there was no need to rush things. We lived in a country that isn't exactly democratic, and we were political activists. I ended up getting arrested and going to prison for 9 years. Please don't think I'm some kind of monster for this. I don't want to go into detail in case it makes me identifiable somehow, but we didn't hurt anyone or do anything immoral. What we did is not even illegal in the country where I currently live, and our beliefs were far from extremist. I haven't seen or spoken to Daria since the day I got arrested. My best friend died shortly after, and Daria left the country, partly due to the possibility that she'd be arrested, too. There wasn't any way for her to contact me while I was in prison, though apparently she contacted my dad a few times in the beginning. Things got even worse in our country while I was incarcerated, so my dad and I immigrated when I was released. We've been living in Western Europe ever since, and life is pretty okay. I live with my dad and I have a steady if shitty job. Months ago, I found Daria online. She lives in a neighboring country, 7 hours away by rail. She doesn't use social media too much, but from what I've seen, there's no evidence of a partner or kids, and even if she's married, I'd be content just to be her friend, as I was for the first years we knew each other. Part of me desperately wants to reach out to her, and my dad has been encouraging me to do so, but I feel like it'd be too selfish. The circumstances of her brother's death were very traumatic for her, and I'm afraid that I'm just a living reminder of all the bad things that happened to us, and if she does have a partner, would my contacting her offend him and trouble their relationship? I don't want to cause her any more sadness. Time stood still for me while I was in prison, but I know it didn't for her or anyone else. She's done so well for herself. She's built a whole life, and I don't want to derail that life just because I feel entitled to a place in it. She might not even remember me at all, and even if she did invite me back into her life, I'd be nothing but a burden now, owing to my wrecked mental health. We've been apart twice as long as I knew her. Have I even the right to miss her as much as I do? For now, I've contented myself with Googling her name every so often and seeing that she's okay. It just hurts a lot, and I don't know how to make it not hurt. I still love her with everything I have. I probably always will. Should I reach out to her or leave her alone? If I do contact her, what should I even say? Update 1. The short version is that I was wondering whether I should try to contact my former girlfriend after I went to prison for a long time. The consensus was that I should, and people gave very good advice on how to do that. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who offered advice or kind words. I had spent so long feeling ashamed about my situation and expecting most people to react very negatively if they knew. I had barely discussed it with anyone before, except my dad and people whose job it is to help me. Lawyers, therapists, etc. And I was very surprised to be met with so much compassion from a bunch of complete strangers. Thank you, truly. Several people asked for an update, and that's the least I can do in return. I sent Daria a message the evening after I made my post. It was something like, I don't mean to intrude, but I wanted to say hello and thought I would give you my new contact information in case you ever felt like getting in touch. If not, that's completely fine too. I left her my mobile number and email address, wished her well, and that was that. I knew it might be a while before she responded, if she responded at all, so I tried to put it out of my mind. Early Monday morning, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number from the country where Daria lives. Who else would ever be calling me from there? I panicked a little bit, but I managed to answer in time. She asked a few times if it was really me, and I couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying at first. She called me by the very affectionate version of my name she used, too. But then she quickly apologized and corrected herself, which broke my heart a little bit. It was an awkward phone call, but not in a bad way. I was extremely nervous, and it seemed like she was too, but happy also. Some of you mentioned that Daria would want to know that I was safe, and this was more true than I could have guessed. Because unrest in my country increased a lot during the last year I was in prison, she was afraid that they would decide to quietly kill me rather than let me go. There are documented cases of other prisoners like me having met very suspicious ends in the months before my release, so it wasn't a totally unreasonable worry. She also said she repeatedly tried to send me parcels of supplies and put money on my commissary account, but her attempts were rejected without explanation. After my sentencing, I was not allowed to receive correspondence or to have a commissary account at all because of the classification of my crimes, so she was forced to give up. She told me this as an apology, as if I would have been disappointed with her for not helping me more. I had no idea she had done any of that. I do know that it was not a safe thing for her to do, and I feel terrible that she put herself at risk trying to make me a little more comfortable. She didn't seem to want to talk about what happened any more than that, and so we didn't. We changed the subject to more lighthearted things. Our jobs, the cities where we live, how my dad is adapting to a new country, etc. When she arrived at work and had to end the phone call, she asked if I wanted to continue talking through a messaging app. Obviously, I said yes and downloaded it immediately. We sent messages throughout the day, and she even interrupted her commute home to send me a picture of a restaurant modeled after one of my favorite books, just because she thought I would like it. She told me that she thought of me every time she saw it, but unfortunately, the restaurant itself was not so good. I was afraid she wouldn't remember me, but she even remembers the things I like to read. She remembers a lot of little things, even stuff I forgot. We have been sending messages back and forth ever since, and talking on the phone after I finish work at night until she gets too sleepy. Sometimes it feels like I'm 24 and she's texting me from a few blocks away, as if the next thing she might ask is, "What's for dinner?" Other times, it seems like we're trying to will a dead version of ourselves back to life in order to avoid acknowledging what we've lost. She seems a lot more timid than she used to, more passive, which I suppose makes sense. Sometimes I worry about how much I've changed and that maybe she won't find anything left in me that's worthy of her. But if I could express in words what it feels like to hear her laugh, I could explain that there's also a lot that we know very well. She hasn't lost her kindness or her warmth or her empathy. She still cares about me and I still care about her. I know that rebuilding a friendship after all that's happened will take lots of patience, and I have plenty to spare. I'm just happy to have the chance to get to know her again. This morning, Daria asked if I want to have a video call sometime this weekend. I agreed, but I'm ashamed to admit that as much as I want to see her, I'm very nervous. I look so different than she would remember. My jaw is messed up and I have the teeth of a hockey player. Fortunately, I will qualify for healthcare insurance soon and be able to have it fixed. I lost weight that I haven't put back on, and I see an old man in the mirror. I'm also worried that I will get very emotional when I see her and embarrass myself that way. I don't really cry in front of people, I'm not used to it, and this doesn't seem like a good occasion to start. Aside from not wanting to appear pitiful, I don't want her to feel forced to comfort me. If anyone has some advice on how to handle this, it would be much appreciated. Overall, this week could not have gone better, and I'm extremely grateful to everyone who gave me the little push of courage I needed to send her that message. 1,000 times, thank you. Edit. Just to clarify, she doesn't have a husband or kids. As I said in my first post, I only considered contacting her because there was no evidence of a partner on her social media, but I understand that my first post wasn't visible for a while, so I can see why that may not have been obvious. Sorry for the confusion. Update 2. I've had a lot of people ask for an update, so here it is. The last 2 months have gone by very fast. I told Daria that I was nervous about the video call, and she insisted on having it right away so that I could get it over with and stop worrying. Seeing her made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. She still looks like herself, or even more beautiful, different only in the sense that she is fully an adult now. The place she lives is very different from our home country, with a distinct culture to which she has assimilated. That she had time to adapt and feel completely at home in this place broke the illusion that no time had passed. In hindsight, that was probably the real reason I had been so nervous. because I could no longer occasionally forget myself and pretend that nothing had changed. The hardest part was not being able to reach through the screen and put my arms around her. Sitting there and watching someone you love cry from a distance is not easy. I barely noticed that I was crying, too. She didn't seem surprised at my appearance, but she did eventually look me over and ask if the food was where I lived. I explained about my jaw and that I'm getting it fixed. Less dental work is required than I thought, but I need a surgery. Her response was to ask for my address and order groceries to be delivered, including a lot of soft snacks that are easy to eat and these meal substitution drinks that are actually tasty. She sent them every week since, even though I tell her it's not necessary. When I wanted to pay her back, she laughed at me and said she owed me a lot of food because I had kept her from starving to death in university. I loved being able to cook for her, and I suppose it makes her just as happy to feed me now. We talk every day and have made video calls a regular habit. It does me so much good just to see her face, and the awkwardness is mostly gone now. It's easy to talk to her. Last night, she brought her computer into the kitchen and talked to me while doing the washing up. It's amazing how mundane things like that can make me feel normal and at home in ways I forgot I could. I never thought I'd be that stupidly happy to see someone washing coffee cups. I'm beginning to think that the idea of home as a physical place is a misconception. She likes to send photos to show me where she lives, what her life is like now. She was curious about how things are the same or different here. I didn't want to admit that I don't have much of a life to share back. Going places just didn't seem worth the effort. She is, though. At first, it was very small things. She would send a picture of a pastry she'd bought at a cafe, saying that she thinks her city has better pastries than mine. I would go out and get one so I could send her a photo, too. Then it was beer, which city has better parks, interesting architecture, a department store, and so on. I figured out quickly that she was trying to coax me into going out more, but I played along to make her happy. I've seen more of my city in the past month than the entire time I've lived here before. I've been to the art museum and finally joined my colleagues for a beer. Usually I go places for short durations at the less crowded times, but I'm still going, which is something. Daria used to be very sociable, so I thought that whatever happened, at least she wouldn't be lonely. I was wrong. There is a lot she could never tell her friends because they can't relate. They would feel sorry for her and cease to be equals. She says our experiences are different, but we are more able to understand each other than other people could, and despite her own burden, she has quietly picked up half the weight from my shoulders without ever being asked to. I am in awe of her simply for being the kind of person who would. For Women's Day, I sent her some orchids and she was very happy that I remembered her favorite flower. The things I can do to make her smile are so small, and she deserves so much more than I know how to give her. But I would do anything for this woman, and I am learning. There are protests happening where she is, with riot police and tear gas. Whenever this happens, she feels nervous and has difficulty sleeping. Now at least I can stay on the phone with her at night so she's not alone. Aside from the anxiety, there is also a sense of nostalgia. She talks about when that was us making noise in the street. I'm glad she has good memories, too, and doesn't have to be alone with them anymore. Finally, the reason I'm updating now. She is coming to visit. We were talking last night, and I mentioned that a church near me has special windows designed by an artist she loves, and I was thinking about going to see them eventually. She said it would be unfair of me to go without her, so I invited her to come with me, and then somehow it turned from vague future plans to being scheduled for next Saturday. She was going to come for the day, but I told her it was silly to travel so far to stay for such a short time and suggested she stay the entire weekend. So she will be here from Friday until Sunday. I haven't really had time to be nervous yet, but I'm sure I will. Thank you again to everyone who has given advice or encouragement. It is very much appreciated. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Dad started an affair with my mom's sister after she passed away, then tried to kick me out. Now, a week later, my dad realized he'd made the worst mistake of his entire life. This is going to be long and complicated, but I need to get it off my chest. A lot has happened to me in the last few months, and I don't know if what I'm doing is the right thing. I just feel very alone. I am 17 and live with my father. My mother passed away less than a year ago. She had been sick with cancer for a very long time before that. I think she had been in and out of the hospital since I was 13 years old. The last few years have been very hard on us as a family, and since Dad was the sole breadwinner, I had to take on the role of primary caretaker for my mother. Sometimes her sister, my Aunt Edna, F38, would come and help out, but it was mostly me and Mom. I tried my best to take care of her, and I would do it all over again without complaints. I just miss her a lot, and it feels horrible not to have her around anymore. It has been a long time now, but I still keep missing her. Not a day goes by that I don't go to sleep without talking to her and telling her about my day. I just cannot forget her, even though everyone around me has. Sometimes it feels as though she never existed. The same is not true for my father. I don't know why, but he has changed a lot. It didn't take him long to move on from Mom. He took all her photos down, he doesn't talk about her, and he doesn't have any mementos of hers with him. I don't know why he is this way because I saw them being deeply in love ever since I was a child. It was just the three of us, and the house was full of so much love and happiness. And then Mom got sick and suddenly all of it faded away. I remember that by the end, Dad had become very snappy and irritable, and I should not be saying or feeling this, but it felt as though he was waiting for her to die. He started staying longer at work and used to avoid being with her. It was horrible to watch, but thankfully, Mom was too tired to realize and understand that her own husband was ignoring her. I tried my best to fill his shoes, but I don't think I did a very good job of it. And then my dad did something that nobody had ever imagined. He started dating Aunt Edna a few weeks after Mom's death. I don't think I have ever felt so angry and betrayed by anything in my life, and I don't think I ever will. How could he move on so quickly? Mom and he had been married for 20 years. How was it so easy for him to just replace her with someone else, and not just anyone but her own sister? It was disgusting. My father told me that he did not expect me to understand right now, but I would understand when I'm older. But as of now, I just needed to respect his decision. I told him that I hate him and would never respect his decision to get together with his dead wife's sister. I asked him how it was so easy for him to just move on so quickly, but he didn't say anything. I had a huge fight with him where I called him all sorts of names, but all he could say in his defense was that I would understand his position someday. I told him that he was a disgusting piece of, and that I hoped I never became a man like him. I know I hurt him with my words, but I wanted to. I wanted him to feel the pain I was feeling, the pain Mom would have felt. She would be so distraught if she found out what was happening only months after her death. It was vile and disgusting, and everyone was making me feel as if I was the villain because I wasn't accepting their relationship. Even Aunt Edna tried to talk to me, saying that I should be happy this is happening in the family so she can help me move on better. I wanted to slap her right then. I told her that this was not a breakup that I needed to move on from. This was my mother she was talking about, and I would never move on from her death. I also told Aunt Edna that just because she had replaced Mom in Dad's life did not automatically mean she could do so in my life too. She told me that she didn't want to replace anyone, just start a new family. I told her that I was not interested in a new family. My family was my mother and my father, and if he chose to have a new family with her so soon at the cost of my mother's memories, I did not want to be part of this family. Both of them tried to convince me multiple times, but I refused to budge. It got so bad that I used to keep myself locked in my room all the time and only came out to eat or go to school. I shut down every attempt from my father to talk to me, and gradually he stopped trying altogether. So, it was as if we were in some kind of stalemate in the house. We didn't speak to each other and just kept to ourselves. It was toxic and suffocating, and I know Dad was hoping that I would relent so he could strong-arm me into accepting their relationship, but I stayed firm. I could not allow this, and I know he didn't need my permission to do anything, but I knew that I could never accept something like this, especially so soon. I had thought that this was the lowest he could go, but he surprised me completely. A month and a half ago, my aunt and my father's new girlfriend moved into the house. Things had not normalized between Dad and me by that time. He did not tell me what he was doing, and I got no heads up. I just woke up one morning to a lot of commotion, and I saw Aunt Edna with suitcases and boxes. I asked her what was happening, but she didn't say anything and stormed to her room. I went to Dad to ask him what was happening in the house, and his only reaction was, "Oh, so now you talk to me?" I wanted to punch him right there, but I knew I couldn't. It was repulsive. I knew what was happening, but I just did not want to accept it. This wicked woman was not happy just winning over Mom's husband. Now she had to take over her house and her memories too. Every single second in the house after that felt like someone was strangling me. I couldn't bear to be around them. I had quietly shifted most of Mom's boxes to my room, and that was my only solace. I knew that if Aunt Edna got the chance, she would throw away or discard Mom's things the minute she got her hands on them. She tried to do it too. She asked Dad multiple times where Mom's things were kept, and Dad kept saying that I had them in my room. She has tried to enter my room multiple times on some pretext or another, but I just don't let her in. I can't stand having her in the same space as my mom. Even when I go to school, I lock my room so she can't come in and mess with my things. I just want to be able to leave this place. Things changed 2 weeks ago. Aunt Edna's daughter, Rachel, F19, came home. Now, Rachel and I have had a fairly good relationship. We are close in age, so we spent a lot of time together growing up. It was as though I had a real sister, but then Mom got sick, and I spent most of my time caring for her, so Rachel and I kind of drifted apart. We did keep in touch, but we weren't as close as we used to be. Aunt Edna moved Rachel into the house 2 weeks ago. I was kind of happy to see her because I felt I would now have someone to talk to, but Dad said that since there wasn't enough room in the house for 4 people, I needed to crash at a friend's place for a couple of days until they figured something out. I looked at him in disbelief. I asked him that if the house did not have space for 4 people, which it never really did, why did he allow Rachel to come here? He said Rachel was in trouble and, as his family, it was our duty to help her. I said I was his family too, just like Mom was, but he had no issues in dropping us the minute Aunt Edna walked into his life. He didn't say anything to that but told me I had to compromise and stop being difficult, or he would be forced to take action. To be honest, nothing this man does really surprises me anymore. He has sunk to such a horrid level that now I expect him to be a disgusting piece of crap anyway. I wasn't worried about myself. I could have actually crashed at a couple of friends' places. I was worried about Mom's stuff. I knew that with me gone, Aunt Edna would try and do something to that, and I wouldn't be able to stop it. And my dad doesn't care enough about either me or his dead wife to stop Aunt Edna. I was worried sick about Mom's stuff and I just didn't leave. I went to my room and locked myself inside. Aunt Edna kept on banging on the door a couple of hours later asking me to come out so we could talk. But I just didn't listen to her. I didn't leave my room that day. I was mortified about what could happen, and my paranoia was reaching new heights. The next day, I woke up quite early, locked my room, and went downstairs to grab something to eat. To my utter shock, Dad was sleeping on the couch waiting for me, it seems. The moment he heard me, he got up and told me that he wanted to talk to me. I said I was not interested in talking to him. I tried to grab something from the fridge and sprint back upstairs, but he blocked my way. I tried to move past him, but I was unsuccessful. He told me point blank that I had a week to move out because they couldn't house me anymore, and that he was choosing Rachel over me because I was an insufferable and ungrateful brat who had no gratitude for what he was doing for me. So he would just stop doing it. He told me the maximum he would do out of the goodness of his heart was to send me some money for expenses, but that I needed to leave and make room for his new family. I had tears rolling down my eyes. I didn't even recognize this man. I thought I had only lost one parent, but that was when I realized my other parent did not even look at me as his child. I was just a person to him, or rather, a burden that he could shrug off anytime he wanted. And I knew that I was powerless in front of him. I could not do anything. I had to listen to him because at the end of the day, this was his house and he was the one who was feeding me and taking care of me. And he did not owe me anything. At any given point in time, he could just choose to stop supporting me and I had to be okay with that. I am turning 18 soon anyway, so he can use that as his defense as well. I know it is favoritism and hypocrisy because he is willing to house and support a 19-year-old Rachel but not his own son. I don't know what has gotten into him, or maybe he was always like this, a selfish and disgusting human being, and it just took this tragedy and trauma to see him for what he really is. I didn't say anything and went back to my room and cried my heart out. I was being abandoned by my only living parent, and despite everything he had been doing to me for the last few months, it still hurt. We hadn't been talking to each other, and I had begun to realize that maybe I didn't matter to him. but I had still held out hope that one day things would get normal and we could go back to being father and son again. Clearly, that is never going to happen, and I feel like a fool for believing that this was even a possibility. He didn't love me, and he didn't care what happened to me as long as he got to stay with Aunt Edna. He did not care about anything else. I didn't know where I would go or where I would keep all of Mom's stuff. I was willing to keep only 2 pairs of clothes for myself, but I just couldn't part with any of Mom's things. They are the only bits of her I have left, and I can never let them go, ever. A few hours later, I heard a knock at the door. I did not want to open it, but it was Rachel on the other end. She said that she wanted to help me and that I needed to talk to Grandpa, maternal grandfather, as soon as I could. She then slid a letter under my door. I didn't trust her, if I'm being honest. I know she was a good person, but it had been years since we had had any actual contact or bond. And at the end of the day, she was her mother's daughter, and her loyalty lay with her mother and no one else. So I was very skeptical, but I was also out of options, so I decided to talk to Grandpa. I mean, how much worse could it get than it actually was at this moment? I called up my grandpa. He lives in a different state and started bawling on the phone when I heard his voice. He asked me what was wrong, and I somehow managed to string together coherent sentences to tell him what was happening. It took me a long time to tell him the details of what was happening, and I also told him that it was Rachel who asked me to contact him. He said that he was very happy to hear from me, and he had actually been asking my dad to get me to talk to him for a few months now. But Dad kept saying that I wasn't interested in talking to him. He had wanted to call me, but he had lost his phone and all his contacts, and Dad never gave him my number. He told me that he would take care of everything and that I didn't have to worry. He said that he would be flying down to my city as soon as possible, but I had to be very careful and not reveal this information to anybody. He said that he would be in touch and that I didn't have to worry about anything. But until the time he comes, I had to ensure that I stayed in the house and didn't move out. He said that he would try to be here by next week. But if that didn't happen, he would let me know. He explicitly told me to not leave the house unless and until he comes, and to not leave Mom's things unattended or unlocked. I felt both frightened and relieved after talking to him. Relieved because I know he will do something and either get me out or make my father see sense, and also because it feels good and light to be able to talk to an elder. I've been an adult for a long time now, and I just want the luxury to be a kid for a while. And I was frightened because I really did not know what would happen now. Seems so serious, and Grandpa has always been the jolly kind. I know he lost his daughter, but I have my doubts that he is going to stand up for me in front of his other daughter. Things just seem like a mess right now, and the only thing I can do at this point is wait it out. I can only wait for him to come and save me from this mess that my life has become. Update 1. Things have taken a drastic turn now. It now makes absolute sense. I had no idea why Dad was behaving this way earlier, but now that Grandpa is here and he is sorting things out, I get what is happening. Grandpa came a week ago and asked me to meet him. He sent me the address of the hotel he was staying at. He told me to get all of Mom's things and that he would send a car. I moved my stuff and Mom's stuff out and told Dad and Aunt Edna that I was leaving. Rachel was at work at that time. I went over to Grandpa's room in the hotel with all the stuff, and he started rummaging through it, looking for something. He finally found what he was looking for. It was a document, but not just any document. They were the papers of the house we currently live in. Then he told me what was really happening. When Rachel and I were born, Grandpa had gifted houses to both of us. Extravagant, I know, but he's loaded, as I found out. He said that he wanted to do something for us, and instead of setting up college funds, he outright bought us houses. Now, the house that is legally supposed to be mine is the one that we lived in all my life. The issue, however, was that since we were minors, both Rachel and me, the house was under the legal guardianship, for lack of a better word, of our respective mothers until we turned 18. I had never known anything about this, and I don't blame Mom at all because she was very sick and it might have slipped her mind. Why Dad didn't say anything to me is a different question altogether. Anyway, the houses were supposed to come to us when we turned 18. Rachel's house was formally transferred into her name a year ago, a couple of months after she turned 18. It's the same house that Aunt Edna and Rachel had been living in. Now, the issue with my house was that since Mom had passed away before I turned 18, the house would temporarily go to my other guardian, that is my father, until I turned 18. That was what was originally intended, and Grandpa suspects that Aunt Edna and Dad are scheming together to get the house transferred into their names legally or just steal the papers before I turn 18 so that I cannot do anything about it. This is also why Dad never told me about the house, according to Grandpa, and now it all makes sense why they kept trying to look through Mom's stuff, why Dad has been aloof, and why Aunt Edna has suddenly come. I asked Grandpa what happened to Rachel's house, and he said that the minute Rachel got to know what her mother was up to, she kicked her out of the house. It caused a huge rift between mother and daughter, but they haven't been seeing eye to eye for a couple of years now. That seems strange to me because if that were so, why had she come to live with us? Grandpa said that Rachel was worried about me, and even more concerned because Aunt Edna had moved in with Dad. She had been in constant touch with Grandpa, and both of them had decided that I needed to be moved out and I needed to know the truth about everything. That was why she had come home, but nobody suspected her, and Aunt Edna thought that she was trying to make amends. I asked Grandpa what we could do now since I still had a couple of months before I turned 18. Then Grandpa told me that Mom had actually begun to suspect that Dad had designs on the house when she was sick. She also had a hunch that Dad was having an affair, but she did not know who it was. I think it was Aunt Edna all along. That was when she called Grandpa and asked him to sit with her and get the guardianship details of the house changed. As it stands now, my dad is not the legal caretaker of the house until I turn 18. Mom had, without his knowledge, changed the clause in the document and made Grandpa the caretaker. That was the document he was looking for, and that was the document my father had no idea existed. So all his attempts at taking over the house are moot because he has no guardianship over it. Anyway, I know this is not the legal terminology for it, but this is how Grandpa explained it to me, and this is what I understand. So essentially, Dad has no right to be in the house anymore, and my grandpa is going to do just that. He said that he has decided he is going to live with me in the house until I turn 18, and since he is the guardian as of now, he is going to throw Dad and Aunt Edna out. I got scared when he said that. I couldn't believe that I had this kind of power over my dad, and to be honest, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I am still a kid who lost his mom and has a troubled family, and I don't want to get embroiled in legal issues. I have handed over the reins to Grandpa and I'm just going to do as he says. I am too exhausted by whatever has been going on, and I just need some peace. I told Grandpa that I will do as he says, and he told me not to worry. I just hope these issues resolve themselves because I don't think I have it in me to take any more drama or hurt. I am completely broken, and I just want out. Update 2. We confronted Dad and Aunt Edna. When they saw Grandpa and me together, they turned pale. Grandpa just waltzed inside the house, and Dad tried to protest, but he shut him up real quick. He had also brought his lawyer with him, and I could see that both Dad and Aunt Edna were very nervous. Grandpa, without wasting any time, told Dad that he was the guardian of the property for the next few months, and he wanted to relocate here, which is why he was giving Dad a month's notice to leave the place. My dad got up and started yelling at Grandpa that he had no legal standing, and very harsh words were exchanged. My grandpa just showed him the copy of the new papers, the ones that Mom had made in secret, and my dad's jaw hit the floor. He said that this was a forgery and that he didn't believe it, but Grandpa said that Mom had the right to change the nominee whenever she wanted to, and she had done it, so Dad couldn't really do anything but accept it. Dad could not believe that this had happened, and neither could Aunt Edna. Rachel was laughing. It genuinely seemed that she was enjoying this entire meltdown, and for the first time, she came over to my side and hugged me. I hugged her back and thanked her for everything she had done for me. When Aunt Edna saw this, she realized that Rachel had gone behind her back to help me, and she yanked her arm and slapped her straight across the face. She hit her really hard, and now Rachel has a cut on her face. And the badass girl that she is, she just started grinning and said that she was now going to press charges. Aunt Edna sank to the floor in tears. She kept on saying that she was her daughter and that she couldn't do something like this. But I could see the hate in Rachel's eyes. She is not going to let Aunt Edna get off easy. Dad realized that all of this was devolving into a huge show and both he and his little girlfriend were caught on the wrong side here. He starts to make amends. He tried to take me aside and talk to me, but Grandpa stopped him. He said that there was no need now to talk to me since he had made it very clear that his loyalties lay with Aunt Edna and not me. Dad said that this was between a father and a son and Grandpa had no right to interfere. I told Dad that Grandpa has every right to interfere and I did not want to talk to him anyway. Nothing he could say to me now would make any difference. And finally, all the pent-up anger came out. I called him every name in the book and told him everything that I really thought of him. I told him that he was a failure of a husband and a dad and therefore a failure of a man. I said that he had the chance to make things right, to let us be a family again. But he was too greedy and selfish to ever want anything that would ease others' pain. I don't even remember half the things I said because I had no control over myself in that moment. When I stopped, everyone was quiet. Rachel just took me upstairs to my room and sat with me for a long time. I feel so grateful that I at least have someone to look out for me. My sister and my grandfather. I don't know what I would be doing if they hadn't been here with me. I don't know what is going to happen next, but at least I know that I won't have to fight this battle alone anymore. I know now that I have support and that I am not wrong for not accepting my father's treatment of me and his complete disregard and disrespect for the memories of my mother. Update 3. This will be my final update. For all those who were hoping for a dramatic and tearful reconciliation between father and son, I am sorry to burst your bubble, but none of that has happened. Rachel pressed charges on Aunt Edna, and Aunt Edna tried every trick in the book to stop her. But Rachel is as stubborn as one can get. Grandpa has moved in, and Dad has a month to move out. He has been trying to talk to me one-on-one, but I reject every attempt. Moreover, Grandpa is keeping vigil, and my dad is really scared of him, so he isn't trying anything again. We got back all of Mom's stuff. It's still safely kept in my room, and I plan on putting it back in place once Dad is gone. I will seal Mom's room because I don't need an entire house to myself anyway. A lot of you suggested I go to therapy to deal with everything that has happened. I suggested the same to Grandpa, and while he doesn't believe in this stuff, he has given me money to get help. Rachel has been coming over every day to give me company. I hate how we had all this distance between us, but I know that she has always been looking out for me. She has said she's going to help me find a good therapist and that we can always hang out together. It's not a very happy update, but it seems like things will soon fall into place. I don't think I'm ever going to talk to my dad again, even if he does feel remorse, which he doesn't at this point. The trust has been broken, and nothing on earth can make it the same again. Thanks, Reddit, you have helped a lot. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My best friend didn't invite me to her wedding after years of friendship, and now I'm questioning everything. My 28F colleague, 30F, didn't invite me to her wedding, and it's completely unraveled our friendship. One of my work colleagues is a lifelong friend of mine. We lived on the same street growing up, went to the same school, and when I needed a job after graduating university, she made me aware of an opening at the company she worked at. I applied, got the job, and it's been quite a few years since, and we still work together. It's a pretty small company and quite male-dominated, so after we started working together, we became really close. We take all our lunches together, we regularly stop by each other's desks for a chat, and we quickly became known round the office as inseparable. A year ago, she got engaged to her long-term partner, and I was ecstatic for her. She had a really tough time a couple of years ago, 2 family deaths close together, and I did everything I could to be a good friend to her while she was in the worst stages of grieving. She cried with me daily for weeks, and I made sure she knew I was always available to listen. I also took about 1/3 of her workload off her voluntarily, so she could take days off when she needed to without stressing about her work building up. So now that life has gotten better for her and she's always smiling and excited, it's really nice to see. Ever since she got engaged, as expected, she's talked a lot about wedding plans, especially at our lunches. I know basically every detail. When she booked her venue, she was really excited, but she refused to tell me where it was going to be, saying that she wanted it to be a surprise. When the invitations came out, the wedding is 2 weeks away now, and I've long since stopped waiting for my invitation to show up. I know when they were sent because she told me all about delivering them and shows me every day the gifts people have started to buy off their registry. I feel silly for saying it, but the more I think about it, the more hurt I feel that I haven't been included. It's a big wedding, and she has invited some other people from work that I didn't know she was even close to. She hasn't mentioned the reason why I'm not invited, and at this point, I feel too awkward to ask. I guess it's just a slap in the face because I really thought we were close, and now I'm realizing that maybe we're not. The trouble is, since all this, I've started to really examine our friendship, and I'm wondering if she even cares about me at all. I can think of 100 examples of where I've helped her work through decisions, listened to her vent, stood up for her when she's had issues with colleagues, etc. Even tons of little things like if anyone brings in cake and she's out of the office, I always save her a slice so she doesn't miss out. But I can't remember a time that she did anything for me in return. Now when she talks to me, I've realized she doesn't even listen to me. When I'm finished talking, she just carries on with what she was saying before, almost as if I'd never spoken at all. If we're ever talking about me or something I've been doing, she never has anything to say. She just kind of nods and then switches the conversation back to herself. I'm starting to think she couldn't care less about me. She just likes having someone around who she can talk at, and whoever that person is doesn't really matter to her. I've invested so many years into this friendship. It's really cut me deep. I feel used. It's also made being at work incredibly lonely because she was my only friend. I've stopped having lunch with her, and any time she tries to chat, I politely bring the conversation to a quick end and go back to work. She doesn't appear to have even noticed. I do still wish her well. I'm still glad for her that life has turned around and she's so happy, but I'm a bit lost. I'm not sure if I'm being too harsh because I'm hurt, or if I even have the right to feel hurt in the first place, as I know weddings have a finite number of guests and you have to leave people out that you would invite in an ideal world. But I'm not sure there's any way back from this either. Has anyone else had a similar experience? Am I being unreasonable or overdramatic? Should I just let the dust settle and see how I feel then? Edit 1. Just to clarify things that have been asked a lot or requested to be put in an edit. She hand-delivered the invites to other people at work, so I know it hasn't been lost in the post. I haven't asked her about it because I'm a total doormat and scared of difficult conversations. I invited her to my wedding, but that was years ago, so it's possible she thinks things have changed since then. Edit 2. This has got a lot more attention than I expected and my first ever gold from a kind stranger. Thank you. I have read every single comment. Thank you all so much for taking the time to give me advice. You have given me a lot to think about. Opinion seems to be divided over whether or not I should confront the wedding invitation issue or just let it go. I am definitely going to make sure that it isn't a mistake. But as for getting an explanation why she didn't invite me, I'm undecided. I'm going to have a think about that and the best way to proceed, but your thoughts have all been really helpful. In terms of our friendship in general, I'm not going to be too hasty to write it off. I'm going to try and put my feelings aside and see if I'm right about it being one-sided. If it is, then I will have learned a good life lesson, and if I see it as worth saving, then I'll have to deal with that the best way I can. It does seem the bigger issue here is my non-confrontational approach to my relationships. Some of your comments were hard to read, but only because I know you're right and this is something I have to change. I've withdrawn from friendships before because they've hurt me and I felt unable to say anything, and that's not really fair. It's a general problem I have with uncomfortable conversations. Whenever I have to have them, I basically descend into a panic. My mouth goes dry, I shake, and I can't find the right words to say. If it's a bad enough problem that I can't ask a good friend a simple question, then I can't ignore it anymore and I need to work on this. Thank you for pointing this out to me as a real problem. I'm going to find a way to get better at it. I will post an update of what happens. Thank you again. Update. So it took me a few days to decide the best way to approach this, but yesterday, I had lunch with her again and had the conversation. I started by saying, "So, you've sent all your invitations out now, haven't you?" She looked immediately panicked by my question, and I knew right away that she didn't want me to go down this road. When she said she had sent them all, I asked if that meant she could show me her venue now. She showed me the website of it, including the photo gallery, and talked me through all about where everything was going to happen, all the flowers and decorations she was going to add, etc. It's a nice enough country hotel with some pretty gardens, but I'm not sure what all the secrecy was for. I probed a little more, asking who she's invited from work. The list didn't include me. I said I was looking forward to seeing the photos so I could see how everything looked. She didn't correct me that I would see it on the day, and then I was completely sure that my lack of invitation wasn't an accident. She looked so relieved when I switched subject and asked if she's excited about her honeymoon and having a rest from all the wedding stress. So, I'm definitely not invited. I thought it over carefully and I have decided not to ask why for 3 reasons. 1. The reason is already fairly obvious. She clearly doesn't think we're anything more than colleagues, and I've misread the situation. There were some other theories suggested, for example, a jealous husband-to-be associating me with her past grief, but considering everything I know about her and our history, I'm sure it's not that. I'm not sure why she didn't cool it on the wedding talk with someone she had no intention of inviting, or even just bring it up with me and explain why I'm not invited, but never mind. 2. Having an awkward relationship at work is the last thing I want. I'm worried that if I push this and turn it into an issue that I'll look pathetic and needy or it will just be unprofessional. I also run the risk of her badmouthing me to colleagues and mutual friends, and I will find it much easier and less messy to handle my own feelings quietly. 3. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience for her, and I don't want to be the source of drama that dampens her spirits at all. I'd rather just let her enjoy her wedding, make good memories, and not bring her down. And I'm fine with not going. It was never really about getting invited to a wedding. It was more having to face the fact that I'd been naive and taken for granted, and I felt silly that I'd invested way too much in this relationship. That's not all on her because she was never obligated to be my friend. Talking it through on my previous post actually really helped me work through my feelings. When I went back to work on Monday, I felt much calmer and more detached from it emotionally. I have looked back on our whole relationship, and honestly, she's always been self-involved, entitled, and narcissistic. Being a bride has just made it more obvious, but it's always been there. She's also never given back to me besides helping me get my job, which, of course, I'm grateful for, and that she's never been willing to talk me through any problems I've had. And although I help her happily with her work, she says no if I ask her for help in return. She has a few office enemies, and even though I saw her negative traits that caused her to be disliked by some people, I overlooked them and defended her anyway. Now that I have put a little distance there, it's quite apparent that she's not a very nice person, and I'm genuinely okay with just moving on. She hasn't really noticed the distance between us so far, or she has noticed and doesn't care / is relieved that I'm giving her space. So I intend to just continue with doing that. If she eventually asks why or I get the sense that she's trying to rekindle our friendship, then it will be time to clear the air with how I've been feeling. If she doesn't and we just continue drifting, then that's probably for the best. It's sad to lose a friend, and it will probably take me some time to get over it and to become comfortable with the change in our relationship. But I have other genuine friendships and plenty of colleagues who are lovely people who I can get to know better now. The main thing I really took from my original post, and I'm so glad I did post because I needed some tough love on this, is that my fear of confrontation really needs dealing with. If I can learn how to better speak my mind as things are happening, that will stop things from building and building until I have to have a serious conversation, and it makes what should have been a molehill into a mountain. I also need to figure out how to have difficult conversations without having an anxiety attack, which not only weakens my message but is extremely distressing and puts me off dealing with things and being honest with people. I had a couple of books on assertiveness recommended to me, so I've bought them to start me off. I'm also looking into going to a coach or maybe a couple of therapy sessions at least to try and better myself. I don't want to hurt other people by doing this, so this has become a top priority for me. Thank you so much, everyone who pointed that out to me. I was aware of it, but I didn't think it was a problem and figured I'd just be that way all my life. Now I know better. Thank you for being so honest with me. Also, thank you to those who talked me through the one-sided friendship issue. I'm a good listener, and I've always attracted people who need to vent, but I only ever noticed the one-off conversations and didn't think I was being taken advantage of as a long-term listening ear. I have been examining my other friendships in the last few days to see if anyone else is using me in the same way or if I've even been doing this to others and not had the self-awareness to realize. There are a couple of changes I need to make, including a friendship that I need to set some boundaries in and another one where I've not been giving back to the other person as much as I should have. I have learned a really valuable lesson from this about maintaining healthy relationships, and I'm very grateful for that. Edit. A few people have been asking about the books I was recommended. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. When I Say No, I Feel Guilty by Manuel J. Smith. Why Men Love by Sherry Argove. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Found out boyfriend was cheating, so I prepared a special birthday surprise. Instead of photos, I projected all his texts with his girlfriend to everyone at his party. Hello everyone. I, 26F, have been dating my boyfriend, Matt, 28M, for 2 years. Everything was fine until a few weeks ago, when I noticed he'd become super secretive with his phone. Before, he used to leave it out on the table, but recently he's been taking it everywhere, like even to the bathroom, which seemed odd. One night while we were watching a movie, his phone lit up and I saw a text from Kelly, a name I'd never heard him mention. It wasn't like a, "Hey, how's it going?" message. It was a heart emoji followed by, "Can't wait for tomorrow night." My stomach dropped, but I kept my cool and didn't confront him. Instead, I decided to investigate. I didn't have his phone password, but I remembered that Matt had synced his texts to his laptop, which he kept in his office. When he went to bed, I snuck in and opened the laptop. Sure enough, there was a whole conversation with Kelly. Turns out they'd been going out for a couple of months, and she had no idea he had a girlfriend. He was stringing her along, telling her he was single and even planning a weekend getaway with her soon. I felt disgusted and hurt, but instead of confronting him immediately, I decided to take a different approach. Matt's birthday was coming up, and he'd invited a bunch of his friends to celebrate. They're all super tight, and I've become close to a few of them over the years. I couldn't believe Matt would do this to me, so I figured the best revenge would be exposing him to everyone. I didn't want to just air things out in the heat of the moment, so I waited until the party. After we'd all had a few drinks, I gathered everyone for a birthday toast. I pulled up my phone and projected it to the TV in his living room. Everyone thought I was about to share a cute photo montage or something. Nope. Instead, I started scrolling through the messages between Matt and Kelly, reading them out loud. The room went dead silent. Matt turned pale, then furious, but I kept going. I finished by saying, "And that's why this piece of trash isn't worth anyone's time, including mine. Happy birthday, Matt." His friends were in shock. Some of the girls immediately came over and hugged me, while the guys were stunned. Matt, on the other hand, stormed out, furious that I ruined his night. Now here's the thing, I feel kind of guilty. Some of his friends have told me I was savage and should have confronted him privately, while others said he deserved it for cheating. But part of me wonders if I went too far. So, AITA? Edit. I did tell Kelly. She doesn't care and she is still with him. If you are wondering what she fully said about it, check the update. I do try and read all the comments, they are hilarious. Thank you all for cheering me up. Update. October 21st, 2024. Hey guys. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. First off, thank you to everyone who commented, messaged, and offered support. I wanted to give you all an update on how things have been since the birthday toast incident. So after Matt stormed out of the party, I left too and stayed at a friend's place for the night. The next day, I was flooded with messages. Some from Matt, most from his friends. A lot of people were supportive, but a few told me I was petty for airing everything out in front of everyone. Matt, predictably, was furious and claimed I humiliated him for no reason. He even tried to flip it on me, saying I invaded his privacy by reading his texts, which sure I did, but I mean cheating's a little worse, don't you think? Anyway, I blocked him after a couple of his angry messages. And honestly, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about exposing him. It was about reclaiming some of the power I felt like I'd lost during the time he was sneaking around. As for his friends, most of them have cut him off completely. One of the girls in our group even texted me, saying she had a similar situation with an ex but never had the guts to confront him, let alone in front of everyone. Apparently, this wasn't Matt's first time being shady, and a few of his friends had suspected he wasn't all that loyal in past relationships but never had proof. Looks like I just confirmed their suspicions in the most dramatic way possible. Kelly, the girl he was cheating with, I reached out to. She told me she still loved him and told me to completely cut things off with him so they can be together. She said, obviously I wasn't enough for him, which hurt, but they deserve each other. It's been hard, but I feel like I did the right thing. Sometimes you just have to burn bridges with people who don't deserve to be in your life, and Matt definitely falls into that category. Do I feel guilty? A little, but not enough to regret what I did. Cheating is never okay, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Plus, exposing him in front of his friends was probably the only way to really make it hit home for him that actions have consequences. So, in case anyone's wondering, no, I'm not getting back with Matt. I did get a STD check, waiting for results for people that were worried. Thanks again to everyone who shared their thoughts and gave me the courage to keep my head held high through all of this. This week has been quite hard. Just a quick update, he has already ended things with her. He reached out to me earlier and expressed his regrets about the situation. He said that he's really sorry and wants to reconcile and get back together with me. It is disgusting. Additional information from OP. The birthday thing happened last week and the rest happened this week. As said in the last paragraph, we have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.